What is going on, guys? My name is Bucky Roberts and welcome to your very first tutorial in MySQL. Now, in order to understand what exactly MySQL is, we first need to take a look at what a database is. Now, a database is pretty much a collection of data on a computer. Now, it isn't just a whole bunch of data packed into a file or randomly jammed onto your computer. It's organized in a very specific fashion. It's actually made up of something called tables. Now, each table is going to store similar information. Sounds pretty confusing? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at a quick example. Say you were making the website YouTube. Now, YouTube stores a bunch of information like usernames, passwords, links to videos, people's comments, favorites. They don't just want to store all of this information in random files. So what they decided to do is better organize this in tables. So instead of just taking all the information they need and throwing it randomly onto a file, they broke it up into a users table, videos table, and comments table. So as we can see, we can use tables to organize similar information. So now all of the users would go in this table, all of the videos in another table, all of the comments in a separate table, and now that you are separating specific in similar information, it just helps you organize your databases better. So now that isn't only the only way that we break up to organize data. We actually break up these tables in a very specific way as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at those. So tables, each individual table is made up of columns and rows. Now the columns are like categories and the rows are like each separate entry. So if you're saying, what the heck, columns and rows, kind of like a grid? Well, yes, it is kind of like a grid. Now, if we took a look at a table here, say I wanted to make a table to organize all of my friends. So I would have each column with a specific category. For example, the first column would be name. All of the items in this column would be the name. I would have another column or category, which would be age in this case. Now only ages go in here. And my last category for this example is profession. So again, as you can see, columns are kind of like categories. Now the rows are a little bit different because each individual entry goes on a separate row. The first entry I have is Bucky, who's 25, and his profession is a shepherd. Now, on the second one, like I said, each row is like an individual entry. So for Lisa's entry, it would be name, Lisa, age, 68, profession, magician. So as you can see, once we have each column with a separate category and each row is a separate entry, it could really help you identify and organize a bunch of data very specifically. Because then if you're saying, okay, how old is Ashley? Well, you know to go in the age category and you know to scroll down to Ashley, and where the two meet, that's the answer you're looking for. So instead of just scrolling through random data, breaking databases up into tables and then furthermore into columns and rows could really help organize your data in a very productive manner. So as we can see, say we wanted to make a huge database that was going to store all of the people in the United States. Well, whenever we were making a database, say we organize it like this, we would say, okay, database, look for a person named Bucky. And it would say, okay, I didn't find one. There are actually 6,000 people in the United States named Bucky. So you say, okay, what about a person named Ashley who is unemployed? And it says, okay, and think about this for a second. How many people named Ashley are unemployed in the United States right now? Probably 5,000, I'm guessing. Well, this isn't a really effective way to make a table because you can have a lot of duplicate entries. Even you can even have Ashley that's 21 and unemployed. There are probably a couple hundred of those. So instead of just making a table like this, what you need to use is a primary key. Now remember this, whenever you make a table in a database, you need to have a primary key, and that is a column that's guaranteed to be 100% unique. So basically, no entries or no rows can have the same primary key. So let's go ahead and take a look at this table with primary keys. So whenever you're making a website, aside from letting the user have a username, which may be the primary key, it's always good to assign them an ID number, or our primary keys in America are our social security number. No one else has our same social security number. So basically, whenever I'm saying, okay, find all the Buckies. Well, it may return 600, but if we say, okay, return the person with a primary key of 1, it's only going to return one result. And you can say to your database, okay, find all the Ashleys who are 21 and unemployed. Well, that may give you 500 results, but we only are looking for this Ashley. So instead, we would say, okay, find the member or find the person with an ID of 3. And that is why you use a primary key, because it's guaranteed to only return one result. So say this Ashley right here died and we needed to remove her for a database from the database. Instead of saying, okay, remove Ashley from the database, which may remove 500 people, we just say, okay, remove the person with the ID of 3, and bam, we're good to go. We didn't screw up our database. So now, before I let you guys go, I want to cover one more thing. What is SQL? Because these tutorials are going to cover MySQL. SQL is the language that databases use. Now, we just can't say, shout into our computer, hey database, delete Ashley. It doesn't understand English. It needs to use a special language, and we'll look at that in a couple minutes. That's called SQL. Now, what MySQL is basically a program that understands SQL. Now, whenever we learn this SQL, we just can't open Notepad or Microsoft Office and start typing this in. It's not going to know what the heck this crap is. So instead, MySQL is the program that understands SQL. And also, there is other software aside from MySQL that can understand this language, but MySQL is the best. It's free, it's fast, and did I mention it's free? Oh yeah, it is. So anyways, there you go. There is your quick background on databases, tables, and SQL. So yes, thank you guys for watching. I'm going to be making a bunch of tutorials, so don't forget to check out the next tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. What is going on, guys? Welcome to your second MySQL tutorial, and in this lesson we're going to be talking about MySQL servers. No more slideshows. It's time to get our hands dirty and start doing some stuff on the computer. So, like I said, the very first thing that you need in order to start practicing MySQL is a MySQL server. What this is a server with MySQL installed on it. So, if you're learning this because maybe your boss said, hey, you need to learn MySQL, or maybe you're at work and you're taking a class on databasing, then 99% of the time they already have a server with everything set up ready to go. The only thing that you need to know how to do is log in, and they're going to give you the login information. However, if you're just learning this at home because, I don't know, maybe you just want to learn about MySQL or learn how to make awesome websites, then you also need access to a MySQL server. Now, it isn't like you can just go look under your bed and find one laying around. It's not like a shoelace. You probably need to go Google web hosting companies. Basically, you need to find somewhere where you can access a server and install MySQL on it. Now, like I said, you can either Google server space and buy an account, then install it, or what you can do is you can just look for companies that offer MySQL already installed on the server. And it's not like this is an uncommon thing where you guys are going to have to search for hours. 90% of the companies already offer servers with MySQL installed on it. That's how common this is. The only thing that you need to know how to do is basically you're going to just need to create an account, log in, and you're going to be ready to go. Everything's going to be set up. Now, the company I recommend, if you guys don't have access to a server already and you need one, I'm going to recommend going through hostgator.com. And I don't say this because they pay me or anything, although I kind of wish they did. But this is an awesome company, and they have all the tools, awesome support, and I just love them. I actually been with them for a long time, but I want to mention this. If you guys can find a free one, then I highly encourage that. And if anyone can actually find a free one, then go ahead and leave a comment below don't keep the secrets to yourself. Like I said, I'm always encouraging free schooling and education, especially when it comes to software. So like I said, leave a comment below or on my forum, and I'm sure there are free ones out there. So anyways, once you have a server set up, whether it's through your school or work or you have to buy one online, then what the heck do you do? Where are you supposed to start typing this SQL code? Well, there are a couple different places you can start practicing SQL, MySQL. Now, I want to mention this before you guys, get disappointed. If you are doing this through school, then your teacher is probably going to make you use some command line prompt that looks like this. Let me actually go, I typed in the wrong thing there. CMD. They're going to make you use a command prompt that looks like this. It kind of looks like you're programming the Matrix or something. I don't know why they do this. It's just torturing you guys. But anyways, whenever I was in college, that's what they made me do. Now, I'm going to be using a different tool that's a little bit prettier. Why? Well, first of all, because I'm not 60 years old and I don't want to use a tool that looks like this. But I want to mention that no matter what tool you use, you're going to be able to follow along with these tutorials just fine. So don't think just because I'm using a different tool, then you're not going to understand what's going on. The core language is basically the same no matter what tool you use. And for those of you who are wondering what tool I'm going to use, it's called PHPMyAdmin. Whenever you log into your account, it's going to be right there. So anyways, that's what tool I'm going to be using, and like I said, no matter how you log into your account, no matter where you get your server from, no matter what tool you use, you're going to be able to follow along with my tutorials just fine. So in the next tutorial, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating our very first database, and I'm going to be showing you guys how to import all of the tables that you need, and yes, I made them, and they're available for 100% free. Thank you very much. And I'm going to be showing you guys where to download them from my website and how to import them so you can follow along with my tutorials. But for now, thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Oh, and by the way, don't forget to subscribe. What is going on, guys? Welcome to your third MySQL tutorial, and before we continue, I want to mention this. Whenever I start teaching you guys about all the different MySQL commands, all the different things that you can do to a database, I'm going to be starting teaching you guys some very simple commands. Now, these commands may include something like how to view your information, how to sort your information in your database. However, before we use those commands, we obviously need some information. We need some data so we can sort something or view something, obviously. Now, lucky for you guys, I already made all of the tables that you guys need to follow along with these tutorials. You can download the files and use them whenever you want for 100% free. Now, in order to use this information, in order to use this data, you need to create a database first because that's where you're going to be putting the data. So in order to create a database, what you need to do is log into your account, and you can either hit this MySQL database wizard or this MySQL database icon. I think this one's the easiest one, although some people may disagree with me, but if you want to follow along with me, click on this MySQL databases icon, and what you do is you create a database by just naming it something. I'm just going to name mine YouTube and hit create database. Now you hit it and it says, okay, created MySQL database. Basically gives you a confirmation. If you don't see this, then you did something wrong. So now we have a database created. We can begin filling it with data. However, I want to add a MySQL user to this database. Now, I don't know in the advanced tutorials if we're going to need this user, because typically whenever you're writing a website in PHP or something, you need this user. But anyways, I don't know if we're going to need it now, but in case we need it later on, I don't want to come back to this section and do it all again, so might as well do it now. So in order to create a user, just go ahead and give them a name. I'm going to name him Bucky. Now you can write your own password, but what I like to do is I like to use the password generator. It gives you a weird password. There's mine. And just go ahead and click I've copied this in a safe place. Click use password. And then once you have a name and a password, go ahead and hit create user. So now we created a database and we created a user. Now, when do we need this user? Well, sometimes we need a user to access the database, which we'll see later on in the more advanced tutorials. But anyways, In order to add that user to the database, we pretty much want to give that user access to use that database. You need to scroll down to the very bottom section and choose your user and choose your database and hit add. Now, whenever you're programming, this is like really advanced stuff that you guys don't need to know now, but you only want to give your user specific privileges, only the privileges that they need. However, for the sake of these tutorials, I'm just going to go ahead and give Bucky all privileges, give him access to do anything he wants to the database. So now we go ahead and make changes, and now pretty much Bucky has access to do anything to this database. Now, that really wasn't important for this tutorial, so let's go ahead and click home. The key thing that you need to make sure is that pretty much you have a user and a database. So now we have a database. That's pretty cool. Okay, so how do you see it? Does it have tables in it already? Does it have information in it? Well, in order to see your database, go ahead and click this icon called PHP My Admin. Now, whenever you click it, it says, okay, wait, and now a tool called PHP My Admin opens up. Now, in this tool is where we're going to be typing all of our SQL commands. This is where we're going to be spending most of our time. Now, all of your databases are listed on the left-hand side. Now, obviously, we just created this one called Danielle underscore YouTube, so that's why that one's there. You also may have one called Information Schema, or however the heck you say it, and some other ones depending on if your teacher made some dummy ones. But anyways, the one you created should definitely be there. Now, in order to view any tables in it, just go ahead and click the name of your database, and if you have any tables already, like for example, obviously we didn't create any tables yet, but if you do have a table like from your work or if your teacher already created some tables for you, they're going to be listed on the left hand side. However, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be teaching you guys in the next tutorial. Actually, I think I have time in this tutorial, so that's what I'm going to do. Now, obviously, we need some data. So in order to get some data to follow along in these tutorials, go to my website called tnbforum.com. It's my forum. And by the way, if you guys have any questions that you need answering, just go ahead and ask me on my forum and I'll answer them for you there. But anyway, scroll down to the section that says SQL and databases. Make sure to ask your questions there. Now, at the very top, you're going to see a link that says Files from Tutorials. Go ahead and click that, and whenever you do, you're going to be able to click on this MySQL Files zip folder. Now, go ahead and click that, and you're going to start downloading this MySQL files. These are all of the data files that you guys need. So, whenever I'm working with a table in one of my tutorials, and you guys are like, whoa, Bucky, I don't have that table, then just go ahead and follow along, download the file. This is where it is. So in order to pretty much extract it, just go ahead and double click this, and depending on whatever program you have, just go ahead and click one click unzip, and then it pretty much extracts it to your downloads file. So remember, downloads, you're going to have a folder called MySQL files, and then another one, and then you're going to have a table name followed by .sql. Now remember in the very first tutorial that I said that pretty much all of the information is contained in tables. You may have a table that has all the user information, you may have a table with all the product information, you may have a table with all the video information. I'm going to name each of these files just the table name. So you're saying, okay, I followed along with your tutorial so far. I downloaded this SQL file, which, whatever you say, has data in it. Now, how do I get it into my database right here? Well, in order to do that, you need to, again, make sure you're in PHP My Admin and make sure you're in the database you're working in. So make sure you have the database selected. In this case, it's Danielle underscore YouTube. Now, once you have the database that you want to import your table into, go ahead and hit the button Import. This means pretty much import outside data. Now, my data, or your data as it is now, it's in that downloads file. And if you click MySQL files, it's the folder, or excuse me, it's the file customers.sql. So go ahead and double click that. And now it says, okay, it verifies that, excuse me, I clicked something wrong. It verifies what file you're trying to open or import, and then leave everything else at default. Now, if you accidentally click the button, then make sure, pause the screen for a second and make sure all of your, settings and checkboxes are the same as mine, format, SQL, so on and so forth. And once you choose your file, just go ahead and hit go. Now check this out. It says import has been successfully finished, 11 queries executed. Okay, kind of confusing. More importantly is you now have all that data I made for you guys on your database. How awesome is that? For free, didn't have to pay for anything. So you're saying, okay, I don't believe you. Well, if you don't, just go ahead and click on this customers table over here and now check it out. If you scroll, you can now see that all of the information that you guys want is right here. And by the way, if you're saying, okay, I just imported a table called customers, what the heck is this? Well, this isn't any real customers from any real company or anything. It's just a quick little sample table I made up for teaching tutorials. Basically, it has an ID number, a name, and these are just fake names except mine, that's real, address, city, state, and zip. Basically, just a bunch of fake data that we can play along with and basically practice MySQL and SQL queries on it. So there you go, there you have it. That is how you get free data. And by the way, I know even though there is one file in here for now, in the upcoming tutorials, I'm going to be making more tables, and whenever I do make another table, then just go ahead and download it again, and it's going to be there. So I'm going to be updating this as I'm teaching these tutorials. So if you ever say, hey, I didn't get that table, well, just go ahead and download it again. But anyways, I'm rambling, and I need to drink a water or something. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to your fourth MySQL tutorial. And now that we have some data to play with, let's go ahead and play with it. So open up PHPMyAdmin by, of course, clicking the link. And once you do, your PHPMyAdmin tool should open up. Now, let's go ahead and start with some really simple commands. Now, in order to type in these commands, you always go up to this SQL tab. Now whenever you click it, you have this text box that opens up, and this is where you're going to be writing your commands. So let's start with something very simple. Type in show databases, and once your command is complete, just go ahead and click go and check it out. Whenever you hit go, it says your SQL query has been executed successfully. If you have any errors in your queries, then this is going to be red and it's going to say, there's error on line 2 or something. But anyways, what this query does, whenever we see show databases, it basically lists all of the databases in your server. So right now we have information schema, or schema, however the heck you say it. That was already built into MySQL. We didn't make that one. And we also have Danielle_YouTube. So if you're just running this for the first time and you want to see what databases your work or school has, go ahead and run that command. So basically, like I said, that is how you run a simple command. And another thing I want to take note of is that SQL, the language is typed standard in all capital letters. Now, the only thing that's not going to be in capital letters is table names and column names. Those are going to be in lowercase, but all of the language itself, for example, like the keywords, those are going to be typed in all capital letters by standard. Now, if you already are in a database, for example, if you already are in the database Danielle YouTube, and when I say in the database, in order to get in a database, then I mean like if you have the database selected already, then let's go ahead and run some simple commands from here. So let's go ahead and select our Danielle_YouTube and hop over to this SQL tab. Now that we have this database selected, let's see what tables we have in this database. So I'm going to go ahead and run the command show tables, and I'm going to go ahead and hit go and see what tables we have in here. Well, right now we only have the customers tables, so that is basically what the command does. Whenever you hit show tables, it basically returns a list of tables for the currently selected database, which was in this case Danielle_YouTube. So what if we want to, I don't know, see all the column names for a specific table? Well, of course, go up to this SQL, and again, make sure we're going to be working in Danielle underscore YouTube for the rest of these tutorials. So basically, I want to see all of the column names from the table customers, because remember, customers, if we click on it, we can see that it has ID, name, address, city, state, and zip, but we want to do it through SQL because that's what we're learning. So go ahead in your SQL tab, and in order to do that, hit show columns. I always spell columns wrong. From, and remember, like I said, the language SQL is all in caps, but your table names are in lowercase, so customers. So show columns from customers, whenever you run this command, what it's going to do is it's going to return the names of the columns, for example, ID, name, address, city, state, zip, basically those categories, as well as some other information, and we'll cover this other information later on. This is the type of data, and like I said, I'm going to be covering this later on. But one key thing I want to point out is this PRI, that stands for primary key. Now, remember in the first tutorial, I told you guys about primary key was pretty much the one thing in your table that you can't have repeated. So if we look, it says the ID was the primary key, and that's why all of these numbers are unique. But anyways, let's go ahead and learn a few more commands. So, as you can see already, probably that SQL, it isn't, a weird computer programming language that you're going to need an interpreter for. It's made up of these keywords that are pretty much written in plain English, very easy to understand. Now, one of the most common commands that we're going to be working with is the select command, SELECT. Now, what this command does is pretty much select the information or data that you want. So let me go ahead and hop over to this customers table real quick. You see that this customers table has a bunch of information on it. ID numbers, names, addresses, city, states, zip. So let's go ahead and select one of these columns. So of course, SQL. And I'm going to go ahead and select, what can I select? City from customers. Now I'm going to go ahead and run this, and then I'm going to talk about it. So go ahead and hit go, and as you can see from our customers table, it returns all of the cities. So anytime you ran a query, you can either look at that query right here, or if you want to see it exactly like you typed it, hit show query box, and that's going to go ahead and show your query. But for the purposes of this tutorial, or excuse me, for the purposes of this query, I'm just going to go ahead and read right from here. So what the select statement does is it pretty much selects what information do you want, and you type this right after select. So we want to select the city from, and from is a keyword, what table. So basically we wanted to select what information, the city, from what table, customers, it's our only table we have to work with right now. And there you go, there you have it, the results of our query. And by the way, I probably should have mentioned this a while ago. Whenever I say query, I just mean a command or instruction that we're telling MySQL to do. So that's what query means. I know I said it for like the last 5 minutes. I didn't explain, but it's pretty much an instruction. What we've been typing in are all queries. On the subject of queries, I guess I might as well teach you guys. Well, I guess I might as well go over a few things before I continue with these tutorials. First of all, whenever you make a query or command and your results are not in the same order as mine, don't worry. It doesn't mean it's broken, or it doesn't mean, yours is messing up or mine is messing up. These aren't sorted or they aren't filtered or anything. I'm going to be teaching you guys about filtering and sorting your results later on, but for now, just make sure that as long as you get the results of cities from the right table, then everything's good to go. Another thing is whenever you run your queries, you can run multiple queries or commands at a time. For example, you can select city from customers, and you can also run another command at the same time. For example, select ID from customers. ID. Now, take note that whenever you run multiple queries at the same time, then they must have a semicolon at the end. Whenever you just run one, the semicolon is optional, but whenever you run multiple queries like this, then as you can see, it must have a semicolon at the end of each one. So I just want to point that out. And also, whenever you're working in the command line, then you don't have that option of with one query in phpMyAdmin, the semicolon is optional. But if you're watching these tutorials for school and you're running these in the command line, then please make sure that you have the semicolon because the command line is very picky and needs that semicolon at the end. Another thing is that in I probably shouldn't even tell you this to be honest, but I'm gonna because I just want to teach you guys everything. You know how I said that by standard SQL is capitalized and everything else is lowercase? Well, that's the standard, but it isn't 100% necessary. SQL is not case sensitive. You can run something like this. Select city from customers, and you can go ahead and run this query and it's going to run just fine. However, it's not standard. It's really hard to read when you do that. And if you do this for a company, you will literally get fired if you do this. That's how much people hate it. So please, even though you can do it, please, I'm begging you, don't. Like I said, I probably shouldn't have even told you guys about that. Now, the last little rule I want to talk about is this. White space and multiple lines are ignores. For example, whenever I run a query like select city from customers, wow, really messed that up. Customer, okay, take a deep breath. Customers like that. Let me just go ahead and copy this real quick. I can run it and it's going to run just fine. However, I can also run it with a bunch of white space in between. And white space are just characters, pretty much spaces that don't do anything. I can go ahead and run this and it's going to run just fine. And last but not least, I can go ahead and even put a bunch of lines in between here. Go ahead and run it and it will run just fine. So the reason that they set up the language to do this was for readability purposes. Say you wanted to only write one MySQL keyword per line. Well, you can go ahead and write it like that and it's fine. It doesn't affect the results at all. It's just for your purposes, whatever you think is the best. Basically, whenever you're working for a company, whatever your boss says, that's what you got to go ahead and do. But if you're working on a website your own, just whatever you think is the easiest to read, then do it. So white spaces and line breaks are totally ignored. They don't have any effect on the results. So that is all you get for this tutorial. I know a lot of information, but in the next tutorial what we have to do is we need to learn about more commands other than show and select. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and I'll see you guys in the next video. What is going on, guys? Welcome to your, let's see what number it is. Sixth, I believe. I forget this. I forget this more than I should, but welcome to your sixth MySQL tutorial. And in this lesson, we're going to be going over the select statement a little bit more because in the last couple tutorials, what I did is I told you guys how to retrieve one piece of information using the select statement. For example, I taught you guys how to retrieve the name, or you could retrieve the city. And if you wanted to retrieve more than one piece of information, you would have to write multiple select statements. Or do you? Well, let me go ahead and show you guys this first. You can retrieve more than one column in the same select statement. For example, let's say you wanted to retrieve name and zip code from customers. Well, you go ahead and write name, and then go ahead and write a comma, and then write the additional piece of information you want to retrieve. So as you can see, using just one select statement, it's easier than using, two or three. Just separate the columns you want to retrieve with a comma. Now, let me go ahead and type this thing, explain something. Now, one very important thing that you want to keep note of is this. Whenever you retrieve multiple select statements, you don't put a comma after the last one. I see people do this a lot and it's a mistake. So for example, since we're retrieving two pieces of information, that means we would use one less comma, so one. If we retrieved all of these, what are those, 6 columns, then that means we would use 5 commas. So that's the rule. One less comma than columns. Remember that. Never put a comma over the last one. So let me go ahead and copy this first and hit go and check it out. It now retrieves both name and zip in the exact same select statement. We don't need multiple select statements. So that would save you having to type a whole bunch of select statements. However, let's go ahead and take a look at this customers table again. Let's say that, okay, our boss wants us to retrieve all of the information in this table. So we say, okay, boss, let me go ahead and write you a script that can do that. ID, we would write something like this. Select ID, comma name, comma address, comma city. Let me take a break here. Go eat some lunch, comma state, comma zip. That can take a whole lot of time, and whenever we type more than one columns, then the chance that we're going to make an error greatly increases. So let me show you guys a little trick. Instead of writing every single column, whenever you need to retrieve all of the data, you can just go ahead and write this little asterisk. Now, this is formally called the wildcard like symbol or whatever. So I call it the asterisk or the all statement. It's that little key above the A on your keyboard. But if you're in school and you're taking a test, make sure to call it the wildcard statement. So basically, what this means is whenever you need to retrieve all of the columns, you can just go ahead and write this little asterisk, and it just is like a shortcut. So now let me go ahead and hit go and check it out. It retrieves all of the columns and all of the rows from whichever table you specify. Now, I want to mention this. I know I didn't talk to you guys about how to use MySQL with PHP or whenever you're making websites or in any type of application actually, but whenever you do, you can do something like this. You can retrieve all of the data that you want to using MySQL and only display what you need in your application. And by application, I mean you can go ahead and retrieve all this data, but only display the name and city on your website or something. So a lot of people just use this statement all the time. Select all from customers, and then they worry about what information they want to show the user later on. But I want to say this. Don't do that, please. That is a big mistake that beginners do. Only use what is absolutely necessary, because if you do this, whenever you select all of the information and you don't even use some of the information, then it's going to slow down your query or the execution of this MySQL script. Well, it's not really important in this one because this is a relatively small table, but whenever you're working with a whole bunch of data with a whole bunch of users, it can cause significant problems, and it could slow down the website for people. It could run into, you can have something called MySQL slow queries, and then whoever your host is, for example, HostGator would start limiting my bandwidth. So guys, I just want to say, even though you can retrieve a whole bunch of data and only display what's necessary to the user, please don't do this. Please only select what is ever necessary and only use this special shortcut whenever you absolutely need to. So I know I talked about that for a while, but guys, it's very important, more important than I could stress. So anyways, thank you. I need to go get a drink of water or something. So anyways, I'm going to save the rest of the information for the next tutorial. So like I said, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys then. What is going on, guys? Welcome to your 7th MySQL tutorial, and in this lesson, we're going to be learning more about MySQL. Pretty cool, huh? So the first thing I want to tell you guys is, say you were in this scenario. You're sitting there working at your desk, and the boss comes in and says, Bucky, I need you to give me a list of all of the states our customers are from. So we say, okay, just give me an hour, no problem. Select state from customers. So we go ahead and run this query. An hour later, after taking an extended break, we call our boss back and say, hey, there you go, check it out. So he's reading through this list and he's like, all right, looks pretty good. New York, North Carolina, yada yada yada. Okay, what the heck is this? New York again? North Carolina? Bucky, what are you doing? You giving me a wrong list that has like all these duplicate and non-distinct results? What, did you just like copy this twice? And we're saying no. Our customers are actually, maybe we have 2 from New York, maybe we have 3 from North Carolina. And he's like, dude, because evidently he calls me dude. He's like, no, I only want a unique list. I don't want duplicate results. So we say, oh, you idiot, you should have told me that. But we don't say that out loud. So in order to get a list of unique or distinct results, in other words, we only want each row to display once, even though we may have additional customers, for example, 4 or 5 customers from New York. If this is the case, we only want to return it once. So in order to do that, we use the keyword distinct right before the column names. Now whenever we go ahead and run this query, check it out. We say, okay, column back, he checks our work again, New York, North Carolina. Okay, make sure they didn't repeat, and they didn't. Excellent. So that's what you have to remember. Whenever you want distinct or unique results, even though you may have a duplicate result in your data, use the keyword distinct and it's only going to return that row one time for each value. So now our boss is looking at all of this and he's saying, okay, how come every time you run a query, it returns, like 100 results? And we say, well, because that's how many rows we have in our database. But what if he's saying, okay, is there a way that we could limit the number of results? Because I don't want to be looking at 100 results every time I answer you a question. And we say, well, boss, indeed there is. So in order to do that, just go ahead and run a select statement. So say we wanted to retrieve the ID and the name from customers. Let me just go ahead and copy this and run it. Now, whenever we were to do this, it would return however many customers were in our table. So I think our table has like 100 customers in it. So we would go and we show this to our boss and he's like, dude, I don't want that many. I only want the first 5. So in order to limit your results, use a keyword called limit. That's the beautiful thing about MySQL. It just makes sense in everyday terms. You don't have to like translate it or anything. Whenever you want to limit your results, use the keyword limit. Makes sense? So we go ahead and show him this and he's like, ah, not bad. So based on the first column you select, it takes that criteria and basically we're saying, okay, limit the first 5 people based on their ID number. So as you can see, that is why we got the first 5 people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, excuse me. So now we're saying, okay, that's nice and all, but what if I don't want to start at the very beginning? What if instead of, getting the first 10 or 20 customers, I wanted to retrieve 10 customers, but only, I don't know, maybe I wanted to start with number 6 or something. Well, in order to do that, we need to use an additional variation of limit. So of course we know that whenever we use limit with one number, it automatically starts at the very beginning. However, there is also a variation where we can use it with 2 numbers. So let me run this query and talk to you guys a little bit about this. Instead of limit 5, I use limit 5, 10 and hit go. And now I can see that it retrieved 10 pieces of data starting with number 5. And if you're saying, okay, this actually starts at number 6, so what the heck is going on? Well, first, let me talk to you a little bit about how limit with 2 numbers works. You can use 2-number limit to specify a range. Now, whenever you're doing this, the first number is your starting point, and the second number is how many rows or how many pieces of information do you want to retrieve. Now, remember, why does this start at 6 even though I put 5 here? The answer to that is because unlike people, where we start counting at 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, computers start counting at 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that is why our first result is 6 instead of 5. So, one last time, remember this. Limit with one value, whenever you hit something like limit 5, that always starts at the beginning. However, if you want to do a range, then you need 2 values. The first value is your starting point, and the second value is how many pieces of information or how many rows you want to retrieve. So basically, you can use this variation to start anywhere that you wanted to. So there you go, there you have it. Hopefully you guys understand limit now because we're going to be using it a lot in the future. And again, if you guys have any questions, just go ahead and ask me on my forum, tnbforum.com. So again, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. What is going on, guys? Welcome to your 8th MySQL tutorial, and in this lesson, I want to start off by talking about fully qualified names. Now, let me go ahead and show you guys what the heck I'm talking about. Select address from customers. I'll go ahead and show you guys the variation that we've been doing, and then I'll show you guys how to make fully qualified names. So if you go ahead and run this query, we can see that it selects all the addresses from the customers in our table. Simple enough. So what is a fully qualified name? A fully qualified name would be something like this. Select customers.address from customers. We go ahead and run this query. It gives the exact same thing. So basically, am I saying that there is 2 different forms of writing the same query? 2 different variations of the same syntax? Well, yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. So why is this the case? Why would they make MySQL to basically be, we can give it 2 different instructions in the exact same way? So, first of all, whenever you're working in a class and you have a really strict teacher, they may make you write the fully qualified names just to, make your life more miserable. Or a more useful way that you would write fully qualified names is, say you were making a huge website and you had something like eBay where you had buyers and sellers. Now, buyers and sellers both have addresses, so you may want to write, okay, buyer's address, seller's address, and then quickly, just by looking at your code, you can determine what table you're working with. So whenever you have a lot of tables and you have the same column in multiple tables, it may be useful. So that is, a different way when you would want to use fully qualified names. But for the rest of these tutorials, I'm just going to be using I don't know what they're called, fully unqualified names, I guess. I don't know, I just made that up, don't quote me. But now that we understand fully qualified names, basically, it doesn't, matter performance wise. It's just, okay, I'm just going to move on because enough with fully qualified names. They're boring. What isn't boring though is learning how to sort our results. So let me go ahead and run a simple query like select name from customers. Go ahead and hit go and look at our results. Bucky, Noah, Kelsey, Corey, Harry. Okay, that's nice, but our boss is going to come in and he's going to be like, dude, Bucky, these names are way too randomized. I want this in alphabetical order. And we're like, oh, crap, how the heck do we do that? But lucky for you, you've been watching my tutorials and you know that if you add the keyword order by and then you go ahead and write the criteria you want to order your results by, you can go ahead and hit go and check it out. Whenever we hit order by name, it takes the results and orders by the name. Now, whenever we're ordering like letters, it's going to order alphabetically, and whenever we're ordering numbers, it's going to order that, what's it called? Not alphabetically, but by number, I guess. I don't know how to say that. Numerically. There we go. Bam, baby. So by default, it orders it from A to Z, and we can change that later on. I'll show you guys how to order in reverse alphabetical order later on. But now I want to mention this because now that we know how to order results, you may be thinking, okay, what if I wanted to retrieve some information? For example, I wanted to retrieve the name and the address from customers, but I wanted to order by the ID number. Can I do this even though the ID number isn't retrieved? Well, yes, you can. This is perfectly legal. Results can be sorted by their ID even though we don't want the ID to be retrieved. So let me go and check it out. As you can see in our result set, we get Bucky, Noah, Kelsey, Corey, Harry. And at first, this may look unsorted totally, but if we browse the entire customers table, check out the IDs. Bucky, Noah, Kelsey, Corey, Harry. So this information is sorted by their ID number, even though the ID number was not retrieved. Now, I want to mention this. Another thing that people get confused a lot about is whenever they want to sort multiple columns. Now we already learned how to retrieve multiple columns. For example, we can retrieve the ID, name, and address of, a table. But what if we wanted to do something like this? We wanted to retrieve multiple columns. Well, let me just go ahead and show you guys an example because if I try to explain it without showing you guys an example, it's going to get kind of confusing. So I'll just show you guys the example first. Select state, city, and name. So this is the information we want from customers, and we want to order by state and name. So let me go ahead and run this and check it out. What I'm trying to say is this. At first, the first criteria we give it to order by is state. And so it takes and orders the states alphabetically. Arkansas, Alabama, I don't know what these I'm not very good. It's like Alabama, I think. California, I know that one. But check it out. Even though all these states are sorted alphabetically, look what happens whenever we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Californias. So it's going to say, okay, I ordered the states, but how do you want me to order all of the people that are in California? Well, whenever we have multiple states we say, okay, now that you've done that, now the next criteria to sort by is the name of the people. So it says, okay, first I sorted by state, and then within those states, I'm going to order the people in that state based on, of course, alphabetical order. So basically, states are arranged in order, and then each person in that state are arranged alphabetically. And we did this by giving it more than one order criteria. First order by state, and then order by name. So again, the rule for this is the same as whenever we're selecting multiple columns, one less comma than column name. So just remember that and you'll be good to go. So anyways, that is how you retrieve multiple columns and order by multiple columns. So, okay, probably brain overload right now. So I'm going to let you guys take a break, go get a glass of chocolate milk, come back and watch the next video. But for now, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you next time. And don't forget, if you have any questions, just ask me on my forum. Alright guys, now that we know how to sort data, I want to teach you guys how to sort data in reverse order. So of course, like before, we can have something like select name and zip from customers, and we can order by zip. And now by default, what this does is it basically sorts it from low to high. Whether it's alphabetical or numerical, it arranges the zip code, in this case, from low to high. But say we wanted to arrange this alphabetically from Z to A, or numerically from the high numbers to the low numbers. Well, in order to do that, we need to add a special keyword at the end called DESC. Now this is short, it's the keyword that shorts for descending. By default, everything is sorted ascending. Now, remember, if you can't remember ascending from descending, a lot of people don't. Remember it like a mountain. Whenever you ascend a mountain, you're going from low to high. Whenever you're descending a mountain, you're going from high to low. You're going down the mountain. So descending means high to low. So basically we're saying, okay, sort by the zip code, but go from high to low. And now whenever we do that, as you can see, our data is now sorted by zip code. The highest zip code's first, and it goes all the way to the lowest. And another thing is, whenever we do this alphabetically, for example, if we wanted to sort name descending, instead of A to Z, it would go from Z to A. Now, of course, the first name V, T, S, R. So, of course, this is reverse alphabetical order. Descending is high to low. Now, I want to mention this. You can go ahead and use ASC, which basically means ascending, but a lot of people don't do that. Since MySQL default sorts it as ascending, there's no need to explicitly write ASC. So there you go. That's a little tip. Now, another thing I want to talk about is a lot of people are wondering, how can I just extract the highest or lowest value? Well, in order to do this, probably the easiest way is to select, let me go ahead and give you guys an example. Select name, ID from customers, order by ID, and like I said, say we wanted to get the, I don't know, the highest value of the ID number, the customer with the highest ID number. What we need to do is first, we would need to sort it from highest to lowest. So remember, DESC basically sorts it numerically from the biggest numbers first to the lowest numbers. And then we would just go ahead and hit limit 1. So at first we're saying, okay, sort this information by ID number from highest ID number to lowest ID number, but only return one result. So it basically returns the very first result, which would be the highest number. So as we can see, Lucy Bronson has the highest ID number of 96. Now let me just go ahead and show you guys one more example. Say we wanted the, oh crap, I messed up. Can I get my query again? Ah, crap, I can't. Say we wanted, I don't know, the person with the lowest name. We would go ahead and select name from customers, limit 1. Now, like I said, whenever we want the lowest value, there's no explicit need to write ASC because that's the default sorting, ascending low to high. So whenever we would sort by name, and I forgot to put that clause in, order by name, and go ahead and hit go, obviously Alexander has the very first name if we were to sort this by dictionary sorting or alphabetical sorting, because by default it sorts ascending order. So there you go, there you have it. There's your little tip, shortcuts, and all the information you need whenever it comes to sorting. And in the next tutorials, I'm going to show you guys how to filter data and basically showing you guys a whole bunch of stuff. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Alright guys, welcome to your 10th MySQL tutorial, and in this tutorial we're going to learn about the basics of filtering. Now, we already learned kind of the basics of filtering because we can now limit our data. Well, that's nice and all, but sometimes we just want to be able to filter it a little bit more. So let me go ahead and show you guys a quick example of, say we want to select the ID and the name of our customers. So of course, customers, but we only want to select the person with the ID number of 54. So we go ahead and write where ID equals 54. So basically what this where clause is basically saying, okay, we don't want all the data, we only want the data to be filtered, and after it you give it kind of a condition. The first condition is just this equal sign. You write the name of the column and then you write what you want the results to be equal to. And since look, oh, I just bit my freaking tongue. Since there's only one person with the ID of 54, it returns one result, the person with the ID and name, ID being 54. Now, I told you guys that there were several different conditions, one of those being the equal sign. There's also the not equal sign, so if you wanted to say something like with the ID not equal to 54, you can go ahead and do that. And another thing, you can go ahead and write a space between the equals and the values in the columns. You can either have it like this, or excuse me, accidentally deleted the wrong thing, like this, or you can have a space. I usually switch it up a bit depending on what I'm doing, but I just want to mention that. Again, it goes back to that white space rule. So whenever I would run this test, it would return all the results. However, if we take a look, you see that 54 is excluded from the result set. That's because we said, okay, give me all the results where the ID is not equal to 54. Now, there are a couple other tests that I'm just going to talk to you guys about real quick. You can also have the less than sign. So if you say, okay, where ID is less than 8 or something like that, go ahead and hit go, and now you can see there are 7 people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, who have an ID of less than 8. There's also a variation of this. It's a less than equals, and what this means is, you know how this result set ended at 7? If we go ahead and run this query right here, as you can see, it includes 8. So less than or equal signs means, is it less than or equal to the value of 8? And that is what I want to be. And another thing, I'm not going to show you guys a test, but there's also the greater than or greater than equals to. I don't think I need to show you guys that test because it's pretty self-explanatory. However, there is one other test that I want to show you guys, and that is the between test. So where ID is between and you give it two values. The first value I'll say is 25 and the second value is 30. You may be thinking that you may use a comma for this, but you actually need another keyword called and. So this is kind of a weird test. It's not like an equal sign or a less than sign. You actually need some keywords, and what this is going to do is it's going to return all the data where the ID or this value is between this and this. So remember, whenever you use the keyword between, you need two values using the and sign. So of course, 25, 30, there you go, just as expected. Now, the last thing I want to touch on this tutorial is, so far we only worked with ID, which is numbers, but what happens whenever we want to work with text or characters? Well, let me go ahead and select the name and the state from customers where state. You can't go ahead and write something like this, where state is equal to California, because if you do, it's going to think that California is either, you know, a MySQL keyword that it doesn't understand, or maybe a name of a table or a column. So whenever you are working with where clauses and the value is text or letters, you need to surround it with single quotation marks. Now whenever we run this, notice that CA is surrounded by single quotation marks, and you go ahead and run this, it returns, it basically, whenever you surround something with quotation marks, it treats it as value instead of a keyword or a column name. So now, as you can see, it returns all the rows where the state is equal to California. Pretty cool, huh? So there you go, there you have it. Hopefully you guys understand the beginning about filtering data and all the different tests that you can do. Not much to it, but there's a little bit more that we haven't touched on yet, some advanced filtering, and we're going to be covering that in the next tutorial. So thank you guys for watching, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys then. Alright guys, welcome to your 11th MySQL tutorial, and in this lesson what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking a look at some advanced filtering using the AND keyword and the OR keyword. So let's go ahead and make a simple statement, say select the name, state, and we'll also select the city from customers where, and say we want to do this. We want to select the customers that live in California, and they also must live in Hollywood, because there are a lot of different places to live in California, but we want to say, okay, if you live in California and furthermore you live in Hollywood, those are the customers you want. So let's go ahead and put state equals, and remember, whenever we're working with text, we need to put it in between quotation marks, and we also want the city to be Hollywood. Hopefully I spelled that right. Hollywood. So basically what we can do is we already know that we can filter the results using a where statement and then making a test. But if we want both tests to be true, then we need to add a keyword called and that only filters the results where this condition and this condition are true. So let's go ahead and let me just copy this, run it, and check it out. So not only does Jack Nicholson live in California, but he also lives in Hollywood. Now, the rest of the database, of course, other people live in California, but since they don't also live in Hollywood, then that also isn't true. And what if there is another Hollywood somewhere else, like, I don't know, Idaho, or maybe there's a Hollywood in New York? Well, that also wouldn't be true because those people didn't live in California. So basically, just remember this. It's basically the same as, plain English. Whenever you say and, both the first and the second thing must be true. So let's go ahead and take a look at the keyword or. Now, if we go ahead and select name, state, and city from customers, where I'll do something like city equals Boston, or I might as well stick with California. State equals CA. Then remember I said last time whenever you use and, then this test and this test must be true. Whenever we run this query and we go ahead and hit go, then check it out. Either the first test or the second test need to be true. So they don't both need to be true, just one or the other. So that's the difference between and or. Whenever you use and, all of the tests need to be true. Whenever you use or, only one of them need to be true. So of course, you're saying, okay, why do we get this? California, but it isn't Boston. It's because as long as someone lives in California or Boston, it's going to give us the results. And what if you're saying, okay, what if someone lived in Boston, California, even though that isn't in place? Well, that still would return the results because it's either one of them. It's basically like this. Whenever this one's true or this one's true, or if they're both true, then whenever you're using an or, then it's going to return that result. Now, the last thing I want to touch on is this. Sometimes you're going to get kind of weird queries or orders, maybe from your boss or teacher. Let me go ahead and type you guys something weird that I'm going to just type it because if I try to explain it, it's going to be really hard to explain. Okay, select, and let me think of something. ID, name, and city from customers where ID equals 1, we don't need parentheses for that, or ID equals 2, so that makes sense, and city equals Raleigh. Okay, so what, maybe your boss comes in and says, okay, we want to find someone whose ID is 1 or 2 and they live in Raleigh. So, for example, if my ID was 1 or 2 and I lived in Raleigh, then that's what we would be looking for. So let me go ahead and read this, and it's going to say, okay, my ID is 1 or 2, but what's going on here? Bucky Roberts doesn't live in Raleigh, so why is that selecting Bucky Roberts? Because what we were trying to say is, okay, make sure that the person has an ID of 1 or 2, which was true, and they must live in Raleigh. So if you scroll down here, you're saying, okay, something went wrong here because, of course, Bucky Roberts has an ID of 1, but we said, and they must live in Raleigh, and that wasn't the case. So what's going on is this. Whenever MySQL is going to read this, it's going to read it in left to right fashion. So it's going to say, okay, basically it's going to say anyone with the ID of 1 or anyone with the ID of 2 that lives in Raleigh. Okay, but that's not what we wanted. We wanted someone with the ID of 1 or 2 and someone who lives in Raleigh. So basically, it gets kind of confusing, but I'm going to show you guys what we wanted and what MySQL was looking at. We wanted something like this. We wanted someone with the ID of 1 or 2, and we also wanted them to live in Raleigh. But whenever MySQL read this, it said, okay, I wanted someone with the ID of 1 or someone with the ID of 2 and City of Raleigh. So that's another thing I want to point out. Whenever you have something complicated that use multiple or and statements, make sure that you use parentheses, because let me go ahead and put parentheses around this. So now when we say, okay, MySQL, this is how we meant it. Sorry for confusing you. I want someone with the ID of 1 or 2. Okay, you got that? And they must also live in Raleigh. So since Bucky doesn't live in Raleigh, he would be excluded from this result. So now when I use parentheses and go ahead and run this query, we get a different result. Noah is the only person with the ID of either 1 or 2, and he also lives in Raleigh. So again, one last time, whenever you have multiple or and statements, please make sure to use parentheses. And this pretty much is very important whenever you're using where with a filter. So that's all I want to point out. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next lesson. Alright guys, welcome to big number 12, and in this lesson what we're going to be talking about is the in and not in statements. So say we were working on this awesome database and the police come storming in the door and they're like, Bucky, we just caught the murderer. And I'm like, what murderer? Who the heck murdered anyone? And he's like, don't worry about it. Anyways, they're in your database, and we know that they either live in California, North Carolina, or New York. Can you give us a list of all those suspects? So you were like, heck yeah, select name and state from customers where, and we're like, hold on, we typed that wrong. I'm gonna have to type that again. Where state equals, and we're like, what's your list? Because we forgot. California or state equals North Carolina or state equals New York. And we're just going to go ahead and say, okay, just go ahead and let me run this query, and bam, there is your list. And he's like, yeah. Okay, oh, wait, hold on. Did you just say something? Sorry, I fell asleep. That query took way too long to type, and check it out. We only have 3 options here, but if we were to have more states, then look at this query. It's going to get very messy, and, with 3 options, that's all it took. But what if we wanted, to include 10 or 15 states? Then things would get really complicated. So I'm going to show you guys a shortcut. Whenever you need to use a bunch of or statements, you can just use the statement in, and it's going to make it a whole lot easier. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit select name, and I think we selected state from customers where state. Now the very first thing you do is you give it the condition to search for. I want to search for a bunch of different states. So I want to search for state in. Now right after in, go ahead and type parentheses, and instead of making a whore, did I just say whore? I am sorry. I apologize to all the slutty moms out there. Shouldn't have said that. That's why, people don't let my tutorials be watched in college or high school or anything, because sometimes I just say inappropriate things like that. But anyways, after in, we're going to give it a huge list. For example, CA or what was my next one? NC, and I think it was New York, if I'm correct, or NY. Now, that's basically all we do. So, as you can see, instead of making three different or statements, we just go ahead and say, okay, where the state is in California, North Carolina, or New York. And then we just go ahead and hit go and check it out. Exact same results, except we didn't have to use all of those or statements. Now, typically, whenever you are searching for a bunch of different things in a list, then you add a condition just to order it at the end. It just makes it organized a little bit better. So we would probably want to order this by state. And now check it out. This is just going to make it a little bit prettier. So as you can see, instead of saying, okay, search for all the people who live in California, North Carolina, or New York, even though we're basically searching for three different or tests, we can just go ahead and make one test with a list of all the states, and it makes it a whole lot easier. Now, say that the police was like, oh, you know what? In fact, I figured out that the suspect, the one we were trying to catch, he actually does not live in these three states. He must live in the other 47 states. So, can you give me a list of all the suspects who live in the other 47 states? And you may be thinking, oh crap. So, before we learn about this nice little in thing, we might have to make a huge or list that says, or Arkansas or Alabama and we would have to list 47 or statements. However, check this out. If we want to say, okay, search for all the people who do not live in these three states, all we have to do is do this. Guys, this is probably the coolest thing I ever taught you. Not in California, North Carolina, or New York. How awesome is that? So, isn't that a whole lot easier than making 47 or statements? Basically, whenever we want to search for customers who do not live in any of these states, then instead of in, where it would be the opposite, they would have to live in these states, just go ahead and type not. Now, you're going to see this not only when you're working with lists, but whenever you put not before any testing condition, it pretty much reverses the test. So we could have something, well, I'll show you guys tests later on, but now let me just go ahead and run this query real quick and check it out. We now get a list of all the customers who do not live in these three states. In other words, we get a list of all the customers who live in the other 47 states. So first of all, that police officer isn't doing a very good job because, there's a lot of people left who live in 47 states. So, they need to kind of brush up on their work a little bit. But anyways, what we are worried about are these queries. So basically, like I said, whenever you want to use a bunch of or statements, you can just use in and then type a list in parentheses instead, and it does the exact same thing. It just makes it a whole lot easier. Or whenever you want to exclude a list or use something like not in, just go ahead and type the keyword not in, and then make sure to put all your options in a list. And guys, another key thing, make sure not to forget the parentheses because it's very important. So there you go, there you have it. That is what in and not in does. Basically takes a bunch of or statement and cleans them up, makes them a whole lot easier. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. What is going on, guys? Welcome to your 13th MySQL tutorial, and in this tutorial I want to talk to you guys about something called wildcards. Now, wildcards are basically special symbols that you could use to make your filtering more advanced. It's also what search engines use whenever they use MySQL to kind of, like I said, make your search more smart, more advanced, because whenever you type dog or something in Google, it just doesn't give you the results of dog. It gives you dog house, dog bones, dog food. And like I said, this is, I don't know, I'm just going to shut up and give you guys an example. But before I do, I want to mention this. That customer table was, it was pretty cool for a few examples, but it could get a little stale after a while. So what I did is I pretended that we would make a website like eBay or Amazon.com, and I made a whole list of pretty much a bunch of items. Now, each of these items have an ID, which is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just a primary key so we can identify it. A name, such as brand new iMac computer or a bed, a stove, whatever. I actually had someone else fill these in. A cost, which is the price of it. A seller ID, which is whoever is selling this item, that's their ID number. not very important for this tutorial, and the number of bids on this item. So this would be like a website like eBay. And again, if you guys want this table, want to practice, follow along with me, then just go ahead and download that file again, and this items table is going to be there whenever you import your file. So anyways, with that long intro, let me go ahead and show you guys a quick wildcard example. Now, let's go ahead and say we wanted to search for items that started with the keyword new, like a new dog or a new computer. So what we would do is write select name, because remember, name is the name of the items, like, you know, carpet or brand new iMac computer. Select name from items. Items is a table, remember, where the name of the item is like. Now, whenever you use like, you can go ahead and use something like this. New percent sign. Now this percent sign is pretty much the heart of this tutorial. This is the wildcard, and there's also another underscore wildcard, and I'll be talking about that in a second. But what percent sign means is basically it means anything. So if something starts with a new, such as new computer, that percent sign could be computer. If it's new house, new computer, or I already said computer, new sweater, new pair of jeans. This wildcard can mean anything. So let me go ahead and run this query and see what we get. Okay, new gym socks, new iPad stolen from Best Buy, new curtain from bedroom. It even can be a word or text after it. So like I said, that percent sign can either have spaces. Basically, we're saying if anything starts with the word new, then go ahead and return that in the result set. Pretty cool, huh? So you may be thinking, okay, if I go ahead and look at this items table, I see brand new iMac computer. How come that wasn't in the result set? Well, that is because whenever we ran our query, we said, okay, this is like saying it needs to start with the word new and then anything after it. It doesn't matter what's after it. So what if we wanted to, you know, maybe search for the word computer, but we didn't want to search like computer desk, computer chair. We wanted something like brand new computer chair or something. So it doesn't matter what was before it or after it. Well, what we would need to do is put two percent signs, one before the word, one after it. So now when we search our computer, then it doesn't matter what is before or after computer, as long as computer is somewhere in that name. Then check it out. Brand new iMac computer, this is at the end. Awesome alien computer game, this is in the middle. Supercomputer at the end with no space. In computer at the beginning or the end, depending on how you look at it. So basically, remember, whenever you use this percent as a wildcard filter, it means that do you want anything to come before it or after it? And if you do, just go ahead and put it wherever you want. Now there's one other way that you can use that wildcard filter, and that is having something weird like putting it in the middle of your term. Now whenever you put it in the middle of your term, then you must match the first and last character, but the middle can be anything you want. So let me go ahead and select the city from, I'm going to use the old table, customers, and remember that's the table that we've been using, where the city name is like, and instead of using that wildcard before or after, I'm going to use it in the middle. So any city that starts with H and ends with D, it can be anything, it can be any name, no matter what the length, as long as it starts with H and ends with D, then we're going to go ahead and get those results. So let me go ahead and hit go and check it out. Hollywood, Highland, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is it starts with H and ends with D. What's in between those two doesn't really matter. And I want to point out one other thing. As you notice, I put a lowercase h here, but it searched uppercase h. And that's because, like I said, MySQL is not case sensitive. The only reason that we like to use uppercase from lowercase is it just makes it easier to read whenever we're programming, so we can quickly see what's MySQL and what are basically whatever we created. So even though we're searching for HD, this can be uppercase or lowercase. Like I said, MySQL is not case sensitive, so that's why we got the results Hollywood and Highland. So there are other wildcards that I want to talk about, and I also want to talk about something called regular expressions, but I don't have time in this tutorial, so I guess you guys are just going to have to wait to the next video. So thank you guys for watching, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys then. What is going on, guys? Welcome to your 14th MySQL tutorial, and in this lesson we're going to be talking more about wildcards. So we already know that the percent sign is a wildcard that can pretty much mean anything. It can mean any number of characters, whether it's a space, whether it's nothing, whether it's a whole bunch of text. It can mean anything at all. But what if we want to say, okay, we want a wildcard that can only match one character? Well, lucky for you, there is a wildcard for that. And I'll show you guys what I'm talking about in a second. So let's go ahead and select the name of an item from the table items, of course, where the name of the item is like. Now, instead of using that percent sign wildcard, I'm going to use an underscore wildcard. Now, I happen to know this site sells boxes of frogs. Frogs, I say? Yes, frogs. So let me go ahead and run this query and see what we get. 3 boxes of frogs, 7 boxes of frogs. Now, if we go ahead and look at the items table and scroll down to the user that's selling frogs, we can see that they're indeed selling 48 boxes of frogs as well. So how come 48 boxes of frogs didn't pop up in only 3 and 7? Well, that is because in our query, we used the underscore character. Now, unlike the percent sign, this underscore character means only a single character. So therefore, if there are more than one characters that can fit this place, for example, 48, that's more than one character, and we are asking for only a single character that could fit in this place. So that's why, what was it, like 43 boxes of frogs or something? 48 boxes of frogs. That's why that didn't pop up, but 3 and 7 did. Make sense? Now, what if we said, okay, but what if we did want to include that 48 boxes of frogs? Well, if we did want to include that, then we would need to put the percent sign instead of the underscore. So again, whenever we use the percent sign and make our query, then it's going to include everything. It doesn't only have to be one, it doesn't only have to be 2 characters, but it could be 100, 1,000. It could be like 57 characters if it wants. Again, like I said, the percent sign means anything and the underscore means one character. And just like the percent sign, you can use it in the middle, at the end, just like we would the percent sign. But I don't want to go through all those examples because they're pretty self-explanatory. So again, whenever you need to use wildcards, for example, if you're making a website like eBay or Amazon, and also if you were ever to make something like search engine like Google or just a simple search engine for your site, you can use the wildcards, but sometimes the percent sign and underscore wildcards just aren't enough. And when that's the case, we need to use something called regular expressions. And in the next tutorial, we're going to be learning about regular expressions, but for this tutorial, well, that's all you get. So we're done with the wildcards. In the next tutorial, regular expressions. I'll see you then. Alright guys, welcome to your 15th tutorial in MySQL, and in this lesson I want to talk to you guys about something called regular expressions. Now regular expressions is basically something that's built into MySQL, and it's a way that you can search for more complex patterns other than just using the wildcards percent sign and underscore. I meant to type those, percent sign and underscore. So it's kind of like a language all on its own, and it's actually incorporated not only into MySQL, but a bunch of different other programming languages like PHP and JavaScript, I believe. So learning regular expressions on its own is a whole nother beast, but for this tutorial, I just want to tell you guys how to incorporate it into MySQL. So let me go ahead and select the name of an item from the table items where the name, and instead of hitting like, I'm going to type REGEXP. That means that we want to work with regular expressions. Now in single quotation marks, you go ahead and you type your regular expression. Now the easiest regular expression is basically just a word. For example, new. What this regular expression means, just a single word, is basically saying search for anything that contains the word new. So whenever we hit go, as you can see, it doesn't matter if it appears at the beginning, in the middle, or as part of another word. as long as it contains the word new, then there you go. So of course we can achieve this just by using like and some wildcards, but this is how you incorporate regular expressions. Now another thing that may come in handy is the dot or the period, whatever you want to call it. Now the period means any single character. So if you were to write something like dot boxes, then if any single character came before boxes in your term, then it would go ahead and hit in your results. So for example, a space came before all these, and before that, a character, or excuse me, a number. So that's why dot boxes matched all of these terms right here. So of course, we could also do this. Now, there are some other regular expressions, and I want to talk to you guys about a few other ones. The next regular expression I want to talk to you guys about is the pipe. I forget what it's called technically. The pipeline, the pipe symbol, whatever it is. It's the little thing above the enter on your keyboard when you hit shift. It gives you a straight up and down. This is basically the same thing as OR. In other words, OR. And basically when I'm saying it's the same thing as OR, you can go ahead and hit two words on either end of this pipe sign. For example, gold, pipe sign, car. And what this is saying is basically this. Search for any item that either includes the word gold or the word car. It doesn't have to include gold car or anything like that, just one or the other. So basically the pipe sign is the same thing as OR. So let me just go ahead and take a look at our results. Traditional carpet. Now, even though this isn't like a traditional car and car is separate, as long as it includes the word car or gold somewhere in there. So basically, it's like using parentheses on either side of gold or car. It just may be a little quicker whenever you're coding. So again, as you are seeing already, regular expressions are just using symbols in really weird ways. Now, the last regular expression I want to talk to you guys about is something called a set. Now, a set is basically like a list or a bunch of different OR statements. Now, I want to show you guys this because it can save you guys a lot of time instead of having to type a whole bunch of different OR statements. Now, if you were, let's say you wanted to match a bunch of specific characters, like for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's say we wanted to find 1 boxes of frogs, 2 boxes of frogs, 3 boxes of frogs, 4 boxes of frogs. Well, we can do that using a bunch of different MySQL statements, or we can use a set in regular expressions. Now, anytime you want to use a set, make sure to include it in square brackets and then type all of the different terms you want to search for. Now, make sure not to include commas in between them. It's not like a list in MySQL, so don't forget that. Now go ahead and type boxes of frogs, and what this statement is basically saying is, okay, search for 1 boxes of frogs, 2 boxes of frogs, 3 boxes, 4 boxes, or 5 boxes of frogs. So it's basically 5 different MySQL OR statements in one. So now let me just go ahead and copy that and run. And as we can see, it returns 3 boxes of frogs. Now we also have 7 boxes and 48 boxes, but those didn't return because they weren't in the set. Now, another cool thing that you can do real quick is you can negate the set. And then negate a set means basically, okay, search for anything except this list. So basically we're saying, okay, search for any boxes of frogs, but since we included that little caret right there, and this is the symbol above the 6 on your keyboard, we're saying, okay, search for any number of boxes of frogs besides 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So now whenever we hit go, that is when we get 48 and 7. And again, this negate symbol, that can be used with other regular expressions too, not only sets. Again, regular expressions are pretty much taking all the symbols on your keyboard that you thought you would never use and putting them to use. I think that's what the creator of regular expressions wanted to do. He's like, wow, since all of these crap, all this crap I don't use, I'm going to put a use to it. And that's how regular expressions was probably invented. And, oh yeah, I want to teach you guys one more thing. You know how I said that you can include a set like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Anytime you want a set, not only of numbers like 1 through 5, but you can use this with the letters like A to Z. You can go ahead and just write 1 minus 5 like you're writing 1 through 5. And that's just a little shortcut instead of, having to write the whole set. So whenever you want to do something like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, you can just do 2 to 9 and it's the same thing. So if you go ahead and search this, since 3 is in the range of 1 to 5, that's just a little shortcut. I thought I'd tell you guys real quick. So again, like I said, there are a ton more regular expressions. It's like its own language made up of special characters, and it really, for me to cover all of the regular expressions would be a waste of time because regular expressions are really outside the scope of these tutorials. They're just incorporated into MySQL, so that's why I wanted to show you guys this tutorial real quick, because whenever you come across them, this is how you put them and incorporate them into MySQL. So again, I encourage you guys to go online, look at a list of all the regular expressions, and then once you understand them, learn how to use them, this is how you use them in MySQL. But for now, thank you guys for watching how to use regular expressions in MySQL. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Oh, and by the way, don't forget to add me on Google+. Alright guys, welcome to your 16th MySQL tutorial, and in this lesson I want to talk to you guys about creating custom columns. Now, creating custom columns, wow, that's kind of like a tongue twister. Creating custom columns is something that you can do, and it's going to come in handy a whole lot. For example, say that you were working with your customers table and your boss wanted to send out a letter to all your customers. So, of course, in order to address a letter, at least in the United States, you write the name, the address, and under that you write the city and state. But in order to write the city and state, you typically write it like this. Instead of writing the city and state like that, you write the city with a comma and then the state after it. However, if we go ahead and we look at our customers table, there's no way that we can achieve this because the city and state are two different things, and the comma doesn't come after the city name. So your boss comes in and he's like, Bucky, I need a column that has city, comma, state. And we're like, okay, well, these are the only columns we have to work with. What do you want us to do? Lucky for you, you have been watching my tutorials and you know that there is a way that you can temporarily make your own custom columns. So let me go ahead and use a select statement, but instead of selecting city and state, I'm going to teach you guys about a simple function. Now, I'll go on more about functions later on, but for now, go ahead and type concat. This is short for concatenate, and it's basically a job that MySQL can do, that it takes a list of items and it combines those items. Now, the first item we want to combine is city. Now, of course, whenever you're using a list, just separate it with commas. Now, the second item we want to combine is just a string of text. We want to include a comma because, remember, and this isn't MySQL, this is just an example, Adams, comma, NY would be an example of where I live. So in between the city and state, I want a comma and a space. So anytime you are just including raw text, go ahead and put it in between single quotation marks. So a comma and space is the next thing I want, and then the last thing in my list, of course, I need a comma to separate my list, is the state. So again, city, comma and space, state. Now those three things need to be separated with a comma. So now that I'm going to go ahead and select that column, and again, this is a column that I'm going to make up from customers, I can go ahead and run this and check it out. I now created a new custom column that is made up of the city name with a comma and a space after it, and then the state. So Adams is a city. Did I say Stiddy? What the heck is a Stiddy? Adams, comma space, New York. Gary, comma space, Indiana, I think that is. Phoenix, comma space, Arizona. So that is how you can use the concat to pretty much, like I said, concat is short for concatenate, which means join things together. So it takes a bunch of items as a list and it joins them together. You can either join together two columns that already exist, or whenever you want to use text, like maybe a comma, or maybe you want to use a hyphen or a plus sign, you need to include that in between single quotation marks. Now you're saying, okay, well, I know PHP or some other program already, or maybe Java, and in order to reference this column, it needs to have a name. So what is the name of this column? Is it city? No. Is it state? No. Is it concat city, comma, state, comma, whatever? No. In order to give this new column a name, because check it out, whenever you make a table, every column has a name. In order to name your new column, you need to specify that whenever you're writing your query. So here's the query we had before. Select this column, the custom column we made up from customers. However, it doesn't have a name yet, so in order to name it, go ahead and say select that as, and after the word as, you give it a name such as new underscore address. Now, whenever you select this column, it's going to have the name new address. So select my custom column as the name new address. Now, I just go ahead and I messed that up. So let me go ahead and run this and check it out. Now we have our custom column formatted exactly how we wanted it to be formatted, and it now has the name new address. So now whenever we are working with a program like PHP that needs to know the name of this, it knows whenever it uses the name new address to use this information. It's pretty much like a nickname that you can give to your column, so whenever you're programming, you can refer to it. Now, the last thing I want to teach you guys about whenever using custom columns is how to use mathematical operations. So, say for example, you were having, I don't know, like say we had this website and this was like eBay, and you were having a sale of all your items where you were selling them for $1 off. So instead of 204, this would be 104, and instead of 149.99, this would be 148.99. Well, in order to, if we don't want to ruin this column already, let's just go ahead and make an additional custom column with the new price. So let's go ahead, hop over to where we can type in our queries, and let me show you it beforehand first. Select the name and the cost from items. Now what this does is it goes ahead and gives us the name of the item and the cost of the item. So now let's go ahead and add an additional custom column on here, and we will call it sale price or something. So we want to select the name and cost just like before, but now we want to go ahead and select cost minus 1. Now what this is going to do is it's going to create a new column that basically takes the price or the cost of the item and subtracts 1 from it. So our first column is going to be 148.99, the second one's going to be 104, the third one's going to be 13.99, so on and so forth. However, just like before, this third column is a custom column, therefore it doesn't have a name yet. So in order to name it, we need to use as, and then we give it a name like sale price or something clever like that. So now it creates a third custom column whenever we run this query, and it gives it the nickname sale price. So whenever we were to code this with our, whenever we were programming our new and improved eBay, we can use the sale price column and we still retain our important information. Now, a couple things you may want to take note of. Computers have a weird way whenever they perform math on, well, just whenever they perform math, because they don't perform math like a human, and they make these little rounding errors, and I'll talk about more on that later on. But we're going to learn how to format this properly. For example, drop all these unneeded decimal points, and I'll explain to you guys why computers can't perform math in the way that me and you can later on. But for now, that isn't the that's not, I don't want to get into all that right now. I just want to go ahead and talk about custom columns and how to nickname your custom columns. So the last thing I want to talk about is, how I used minus as a simple mathematical operation? You can also use plus, and whenever you want to multiply, you use the asterisk, the symbol above the 8, and that means multiply it by 1, and divide is the forward slash. So again, plus, minus, asterisk for multiply, and forward slash for divide. So, don't look for like a division key on your keyboard or something because it doesn't exist. But anyways, I bet your brains are jam-packed full of information. So please go take a break, go do something else, go watch some TV or something, and when you're ready to finally come back to these tutorials, because I know it's a lot, then you're welcome back. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to add me on Google+, and I will see you guys in the next video. Alright guys, welcome to tutorial number 17, and in this lesson what we're going to do is I'm going to talk more about functions, because in the last tutorial what we did is we took a look at the concat function, which basically took a list of items and put them all together. But now I want to talk a little bit more about functions and the different type of functions. So basically what a function is it's a name that does something. For example, concat does something to a list of items, aka string it together, but other functions have different names. So let's go ahead and take a look at it, some simple examples first. So I'm going to go ahead and select the name of a customer, and I'm going to also select another custom column. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a function called upper. Now again, like I said, after every function, they always have parentheses, and in between the parentheses is when you put the extra information. Now, this information differs from function to function. For example, upper just takes the name of a column. Concat takes a list. It really depends on the function what you have to put inside those parentheses. But what this function is going to do is it basically takes this column and it changes it all to uppercase letters. So let me just go ahead and run this query, and then you'll see what I'm talking about. From customers. So again, the job of concat was to tie things together. The job of upper is just to uppercase everything. And each different function has a different job. So that is how you can think of functions, just jobs. So as you can see, here is the original name, just standard format, and whenever you apply the upper function to the column name, it changes everything to upper. So using functions is actually really simple. Just go ahead and write the function name and then put whatever information you need to right in between the parentheses. Now another cool thing is we already saw concat and upper. Those are called string functions. Basically, they're functions that you can apply to characters or text. But you can also use numeric functions. For example, get the absolute value of numbers, get the square root of numbers. Let me go ahead and show you guys an example. Select cost, and I'll also make my second column to find the square root of cost. So square root is the name of the function, and cost. And by the way, I'm not going to show you all the functions, because once you learn how to, use functions in a very basic fashion, then it gets kind of, repetitive. So instead of showing you all the functions, I'm just going to show you the basics. And if you want a list, then go on the MySQL website, or probably a bunch of different websites have the list of functions. But anyways, in the first column, it's going to be the original cost of the item. And in the second column, I'm just going to get the square root of that cost from items. Now, to be honest, I would have no idea when you would ever want the square root of something, how much something costs, because you never go into a grocery store, see a box of cereal that's like $5, like, I need to know the square root of this, but this is just an example. So basically, as you can see, the first column is the cost, 14 to, or excuse me, 150 to 15 bucks, and the second column is the square root of that number. So the square root of 149.99 is 12.24, so on and so forth. So that is how you can use very simple basic functions, both character functions and numeric functions. However, since I have time, I might as well show you guys this. There is another type of function, and that's called an aggregate function. You see what these functions did is they basically changed the data in some way, so you ended up with an entire column of information. So the original column was this, and then your new column was the exact same length. In this example, each one was like 30 rows long. Well, what an aggregate function does is it takes an entire column of information and it gives you one answer. For example, let me go ahead and I would say I want the average of this column. So what it would do is it would add up all of these numbers and give you the average. And of course, the average isn't 30 columns long, it's only one answer. So say we wanted to add all of the items together, the price of all the items, and figure out the average cost of all of the items on my website. In order to do that, just go ahead and select average is an aggregate function, so this is only going to give you one number as a result, not a whole list. The average cost of all the items. So let me go ahead and run this and check it out. instead of giving you a huge list of numbers, it just adds up all of the prices of all the items on your website, and the average cost of all of them is $463. There you go. But what if you wanted to figure out something like how many bids are on all of the items? Well, what we could do is we could hop over to items and say, okay, bids. 3 plus 32 is 35, plus 566 is, I gotta go ahead and get my graphing calculator. Or what we could do is we could just use an aggregate function. So in order to do this, the aggregate function for this is sum. What sum does is it takes a column of bids and it adds up, pretty much adds them all up, figures out the sum of all of the bids. So let me just finish this query from items and check it out. There were 10,939 bids made on all of the items on my website. Pretty sweet, huh? So in the next tutorial, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you guys about the different aggregate functions and also show you guys some other cool examples and how to run several aggregate functions at once. So there's a lot more to cover with functions and aggregate functions. So sorry, but you aren't done yet. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Alright guys, welcome to lesson number 18, and now that we understand functions and aggregate functions, I want to show you guys how you are typically going to use them in a useful manner. Because if we go ahead and we look at like the items table, yeah, we can go ahead and figure out the average of all of these, or we can add up all the bids, but that isn't really useful. I mean, it's kind of a neat piece of information, but that's not something we would actually use. When we were making a website like eBay, what we would typically do is we would want to find out not the price of all of the items on the website, but maybe the average price of a single seller's items. Or maybe how many items did, I don't know, user number 11 have for sale? 1, 2, 3. So let me go ahead and show you guys how to make aggregate functions for a single person or for a single parameter. So let's go ahead and let me think of a real life problem. Say we wanted to figure out how many items seller number 6 was selling. And by the way, seller ID, these are just like different sellers. So let's say that my ID number is number 6 and I'm selling a microwave, 48 boxes of frogs, and shampooing, which I had someone else fill these out, but I guess I'm selling shampoo. Maybe it's the brand, shampooing, I don't know. But anyways, I'm selling 3 different items. So let's go ahead and figure out how to calculate that. So select, now the next aggregate function I want to talk to you guys about is called count. What count does is you give it a parameter and it counts all of the rows in a column. For example, if you were just to count the name in from items, it would give you like 100 items because that's how many items are listed on that website. However, if you only wanted to count my items, you would add a clause after this. For example, where seller underscore ID equals 6. So remember, my seller ID is equal to 6. So this is only going to say, okay, count the number of items where I am the seller. So now if you go ahead and hit go, check it out. Now it comes up with that answer 3 items because what was I selling? Oh, crap, I forgot already. I remember 2 of them, like a box of frogs and shampoo. What was the other one? Oh yeah, a microwave, box of frogs, and shampoo. So basically, you could go ahead and count anything. You can go ahead and count the name or count the cost. It doesn't matter what you count, but as long as you have that clause, let's see if I, nope, copied the wrong thing. So as long as you have that clause, count rows from the items where seller ID equals 6. Now, what if you wanted to say, okay, I wonder what the average price of all of my items are? Well, we can do that as well. Select average cost from items. Now, if we run this, it's going to go ahead and figure out the average cost for all of the items on the entire website. But I only want to get the average cost of my items. So what we do is we would add a where clause, seller underscore ID equals 6. Now we go ahead and run that and check it out. the average price of my items, my microwave, box of frogs, and my shampoo, if you add them together and get the average, it's around 80 bucks. Pretty cool, huh? So that is, a more useful piece of information. Maybe you wanted to give everyone their own profile, and at the top you would have their statistics. You would run a query like that and show their statistics right at the top of the web page. So now that I got that taken care of, I want to show you guys one more thing, and that is how to run several aggregate functions at once. Now what we can do is we can just go ahead and run each thing, then put a semicolon at the end, run a query again, put a semicolon at the end, but I want to show you guys a shortcut. In order to run several aggregate functions at once, let's go ahead and tie everything we learned together so far, and let's see, let's say okay, we know my items already. I'm seller ID number 6. Let's get another good seller. Sort by seller ID. Okay, number 12 has a bunch of items: a hair dryer or PlayStation, a used car, a bikini, and an air conditioner. So I'm guessing that they live in Florida with those things. But anyways, that's what we're going to be, running our data on. So first of all, let's go ahead and count all of their items. So in order to do that, we can just go ahead and select count. Now again, since the rows don't really matter or what column you want to count, because any column it's going to come up with the same number, which is like 5 or 6, whatever it was. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit count all as item underscore count. Now remember, whenever I hit as, since we're creating our own custom columns, what we're going to do is I'm just going to name it item count, and therefore later on it's easier to see what, because I'm going to be doing a bunch of different jobs or functions, and it's easier to see if I give each one a custom name what function I ran. Now, another function I want to talk to you guys about is max and min, M-I-N. Whenever you run this max, it's going to get the highest value. So if you had 3 different items, one was $10, one was $20, one was $30, the max would be 30 and the min would be 10. So again, max is the highest value of that list and min is the lowest value. So let's figure out which item costed the most. So max cost, of course, because we're working with price, and we'll just name this as max. So whenever we see it, we'll just name it as max. That's what I just said. Just wanted to say it twice. So now we already know average. Let's go ahead and get the average price of their items, average cost, and I'll just name this as average from items. Now again, if we run this query right now, what it's going to do is it's going to count all of the items, get the maximum cost, and get the average cost for the entire website. But I only want to figure out the item count and the max and the average price where seller ID equals 12. So that's what I'm going to do. Go ahead and run this and check it out. So again, seller 12, who is, we'll say he's my friend named Tony, he's selling 5 items. His maximum item is selling for $5,700. That must have been the bikini. And the average price for his items were $1,421 and about a quarter. So now if we go over in the items table and verify this, we'll just make sure that the max, check it out, a used car for $5,700.50. So that is indeed his maximum priced item. So there you go. That is how you can run several aggregate functions at once. Again, the easiest way is just to put each on a new line and then make sure to give it a nickname or name it as something, because whenever you're figuring it out later on, it's easier to go back and look, oh yeah, that's the max or that's the average. So that's your little tip, and there you go. So guys, take a deep breath. You are done with functions and aggregate functions. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. What is going on, guys? Welcome to your 19th MySQL tutorial, and I want to show you guys a nice little tip that's going to save you guys a whole bunch of time in this tutorial. So in the last tutorial, what I did is I showed you guys how you could find a number of listings for each seller. So let's go ahead and run an aggregate function. For example, if we wanted to find the number of listings for each seller, we would go ahead and select seller underscore ID, and we would also do something like count all, and what this would do is count all their listings, and I'm just going to name this as item count from items. Now, in order to get an individual seller, what we would do is we would add a where clause. For example, where seller underscore ID equals 1. Now, what this line of code would do was basically get the seller ID and count their items where the seller ID was equal to 1. So let's go ahead and hit go. And obviously, seller ID is selling 2 items. Okay, now we need to do this for seller number 2. Seller number 2, let's go ahead and run this. They are selling 2 items as well. Okay, how many people do we have in this? Oh, wow, we have like 100 different sellers. Okay, let me go grab a book. This is going to take some time. Or is it? What if there was an easier way that we could do this? Instead of using this where clause, what we could do is we could use a new little trick called group by. And instead of having to type each individual seller, let me just go ahead and show you this. Whenever you use group by, just go ahead and type what you want to group by. For example, seller ID. And what this is going to do is it's going to list the seller ID and the number of items for each seller ID. In other words, for each seller. So again, instead of having a bunch of different where clauses for each seller, we can just go ahead and group them by seller ID, and it's going to do all of this automatically for us. So let me go ahead and hit go and check this out. How amazingly awesome is this? Again, using group by, we can see that seller 1 is selling 2 items. The next seller has 2 items listed, and let's see, like this seller has 5 items listed. This seller has 4 items listed. It's a lot easier than having to type each seller individually. Pretty dang sweet, huh? Now, furthermore, you can also filter the results of this. For example, let's say that we only wanted to list the users that have 3 or more items listed on our website. We only wanted to list the power sellers. So in order to do that, go up to your query, and of course we need to still group by seller ID. And now instead of a where clause, you use a keyword called having. Now having is kind of like the where of groups. So having, and then you write the test. We want to list all sellers having a count, in other words, having items listed that are greater or equal to, I don't know, let's just say greater or equal to 3. So now, not only is it going to list all of the sellers and the number of items, but it's only going to list the ones that have a count higher than 3. And that kind of looks like the, kind of reminds me of something. I can't tell exactly what. But anyways, whenever we list this, check it out. Now, the only sellers that are listed are the ones that have an item count of 3 or higher, 3, 4, 5, etc. So now, if you wanted to list like the top sellers for your website or something, this is how you would do that. Again, one last time. Having is basically, it's similar to the where clause where you can give a test and it can filter your results. Just remember this. Whenever you're using groups, remember to use the keyword having. Whenever you're just using rows, like a typical test, use the where clause. But having is for groups, where is for just basic tests. So the last thing I want to tell you guys in this tutorial is you can also order by a group. For example, you see how we got the list of all the power sellers, all of the sellers who listed 3 or more items? Well, I want to arrange this a little bit prettier. I want to arrange these sellers from highest to lowest. The people who have the most items listed to the people who have the lowest items listed, or the least items. Oh, I got some freaking phlegm in my throat. So in order to do that, after this query, we can just go ahead and add a simple order by statement. Now I want to mention this because a lot of people ask me about this. You know how these are the columns that were originally in the table: ID, name, cost, seller ID, and bids. Now we also have this extra column that we named as item count. Now this column is a temporary column. It's kind of like a nickname of column. So can we go ahead and order by that column even though it isn't a permanent column? Well, yes we can. Whenever we order by item count, it's going to order by that temporary column. In other words, the number of items for our sellers. Now, since we want to order from highest to lowest, we can't leave it at default because default is ascending from low to high. We want it from high to low, descending, just like that. So basically, let me go ahead and run this query and then I'll talk you guys through it. As you can see, it now lists the sellers in order for the sellers that have the most items listed to the sellers that have the least items listed all the way down to 3. So basically, even though this is a really long and probably confusing query at first glance, I'm going to tell you guys, basically you can read it in plain English. It's saying this. Take a deep breath. Give me the seller ID and the number of items from each seller who listed 3 or more items and arrange them from highest to lowest. So again, if you just read it in plain English, it's going to make a lot more sense. And that's typically what I do. Whenever I come into a database for the first time that someone else was working on, I just try to read it like plain English. Again, each of these keywords, not only the MySQL, but also the column names, they're written in plain English. So therefore, you can just say, okay, give me the seller ID and number of items from each seller who listed 3 or more items, and then once you have that information, just arrange them from highest to lowest. Simple enough. So hopefully you can understand how to read complex queries by converting that to plain English. But anyways, that's all I have for you guys for this tutorial. Probably brain overload. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and in the next tutorial, I promise, we're done with all this crap. It's going to get a whole lot easier. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you then. Alright guys, welcome to your 20th MySQL tutorial. Congratulations on making it this far, but I will have to say that you better be ready to get your mind blown in about 1 minute because that's what I'm about to do. What I'm about to teach you guys is about subqueries. Now what a subquery is a query inside another query. Inception. So it sounds weird, it is, but it can come in useful a whole lot. So let me go ahead and show you guys a really quick example first. Now the first example I want to show you guys, I have to admit, it's pretty useless and there's a lot easier way that you can do this, but it's the easiest example I can possibly think of. So say we wanted to do something like we have all of these items on our website, our eBay website. Now what we want to do is we want to list the items whose price is above average. So how do we solve this problem? Let's take this a step at a time. The first thing that we need to do is we need to add up the price of all of these items and get the average. Once we have the average price, we can use that number to list all the items that are greater than that price. For example, if the average price of these items was $500, we would figure that out first, and then once we figured out the average price is $500, we would list all the items greater than $500. Sounds simple? Well, now Alrighty guys, welcome to your 21st MySQL tutorial, and in this lesson I'm going to give you guys another more confusing example of a subquery. However, once I show you guys this example, it should pound the idea of subqueries through your head so hard that you couldn't forget it if you wanted to. So in this problem, what we're going to be solving is we want to find out which seller has the cheapest frogs. So of course we know that if we go over to our items table, there are a bunch of different sellers with a bunch of different frogs, but we want to find the best price on them. So let's go ahead and hop over to where we type in our queries, and in order to solve this problem, again, let's break it into a couple steps. The first thing we need to do is find out which sellers are even selling frogs. And then once we have a list of all the sellers that are selling frogs, we need to figure out the cheapest of those in the list. So again, like I said, the first thing we need to do is get a list of the sellers that are selling frogs. So let's go ahead and select the seller ID, which is basically the seller, from the table items, where the name, and remember the name is just the name of the items, is like, and we'll just use that wildcard %, boxes of frogs. But you have to spell it correctly. That's a key. So let's go ahead and search and see what we get up with. We ended up with 68, 6, and 18. And those are the three sellers who are selling frogs. Now, even though whenever we get our results in MySQL, it presents the results as a table with a column 68, 6, and 18. But not only is this a table, but this is a list as well. So therefore, you know how I told you that in some functions like concat you use a list, and whenever you use the keyword in you use a list? Well, you can also use this entire query right here, and it will treat it as a list as well. So basically, whenever we use a list in MySQL, we can just go ahead and plug in this query instead, and therefore a query inside another query, inception, aka subqueries, but it's just so much funner to say inception. So now let's go ahead and copy this entire query. I already have it copied. So basically, we solved step number one. We found out which sellers are selling frogs. So hopefully you copied that query. So the next thing we need to do is we need to get the cheapest price of frogs out of that list. So let me go ahead and do that now. So select the name of the item, which will be however many boxes of frogs, and the minimum cost from items where name, and let me see how I can do this, where name is like boxes of frogs. Now we need to include this name because whenever we select the items, how can I explain this? Whenever we select all the items from our list of sellers, those sellers may be selling different items too. But what we want is we only want the items who are boxes of frogs. Basically, we're only in it for the frogs. Sorry to sound greedy, but you know, we only are. And seller underscore ID is in. Now remember, I told you guys, whenever you use the keyword in MySQL, it takes a list. Now our list was 68, 6, and 18. Those were the three sellers. So basically we're saying, okay, give me the name of the product and the minimum cost from basically all of the items on our website, but the name has to be like boxes of frogs, so basically they have to be boxes of frogs, and the seller has to be one of these sellers. Well, we already know that these sellers are the ones that are selling boxes of frogs, so that should save our query a little bit of time. Now whenever we hit go, we see that, okay, the cheapest boxes of frogs that we can buy is 3 boxes of frogs for $30 and basically 50 cents. However, instead of having to type in this list every single time, we need to add a subquery in here because you know what? Whenever our users that are actually using the website are looking for information like we just did, we're not going to be there every single second to monitor what they're doing on the website, and whenever they find a list, we can't type it in manually for them. So in order to do something like this, we need to add a subquery as a query in here. So go ahead and copy that query that you have before, and remember, this is the very first query that we ran. This is what returns 68, 6, and 18. So remember from last time, MySQL works from the inside out. So not only whenever, well, I want to mention this. In the last tutorial, it figured out one value, but it could also figure out a list of values as well. So again, the first thing MySQL is going to do whenever it runs a query is it's going to figure out what's in between the parentheses. So it runs this query first, and it gets the result of 68, 6, and 18. So basically, it runs this entire query, but when it gets to this, it's going to treat this query as literally the numerical values 68, 6, and 18. So select the name and minimum cost from items where the name of the product is like boxes of frogs and the seller ID is in the list 68, 6, and 18. So now let's go ahead and run this and we should get the exact same result. So how awesome is that? Basically you plug in a list. How can I say this? Take a deep breath. Basically, instead of typing in a list manually, we just plug in another query and it treats it as a list. Simple enough. And I want to mention this. I won't show you guys an example because if I do, you're probably just going to stop watching my tutorials. But we can also run a query within a query within a query. So you know how I put one query inside another query? Well, we could also put another query inside that query and it would be like 3 layers deep. If you ever watched the movie Inception, you know exactly what I'm talking about. By the way, I really like the movie Inception. I probably should have mentioned that. But I won't show you guys an example of that because if I do, your brains are probably going to explode. And no one really does that anyways. Whenever they're doing complex queries like that, like 4 or 5 subqueries deep, it's easier just to use join tables, and I'll show you guys that later on. But anyways, I'm going to do you a favor, and I'm going to shut up right now, and I'm going to be done with subqueries for now. In the next tutorial, we're probably going to learn about joining tables. It's going to be awesome. So thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you understand subqueries, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Alright guys, welcome to your 20-second MySQL tutorial, and in this lesson, I'm going to be talking to you guys about one of the coolest, most important, and also powerful features of MySQL, and that is how to join together tables. So let's go ahead and take a look at our tables we have so far. We have a customers table, which pretty much all the users of the website, this is their personal information, and also an items table, because remember, our website was kind of like eBay, where the user can list an item and other people can bid on it. So check it out. What if our boss comes in and he's like, Bucky, these items, you're doing a pretty good job on these. You have the name of the item, the cost of the item, the number of bids. That's pretty good information. But we also need the seller's information. Whenever you list the item in a table, you need the seller's name and address and zip code and state. Therefore, whenever anyone is bidding on your item, then they know if they win it where to send the money to, or whenever they win your item, they can expect they know where the item's coming from to calculate shipping cost. So we say, okay, that's going to be a problem. So you're telling me that I have to redesign my entire items table to include the seller's name, address, zip code on each row? Well, check this out. First of all, whenever you have a user that is selling like 20 items, that means that we would have 20 different rows that say the same thing. Bucky Roberts, Bucky Roberts, Bucky Roberts, Bucky Roberts, New York, New York, New York, New York, New York. Okay, so that can get kind of repetitive, and we know that anytime we see repetitive information in MySQL, that means we probably did something wrong. Aside from that, say that I'm a user on this website and I have, like I said, 20 or 30 items listed. Now I'm looking at my address and I accidentally typed North Carolina instead of New York as my state. So does that mean that I'm going to have to go through every item and change my address from New York to North Carolina or vice versa? Well, that can be a pain in the butt too. So what can we do to solve this problem? Because we can't get away from the fact that we need the seller's information on each row. Well, thankfully for you, in MySQL, you can do something called join tables together. And whenever you do this, you create a temporary table that pretty much grabs information from any table that you want it to and makes a temporary table with all the information you want. So let me go ahead and show you guys how to do this real quick. Say our boss says, okay, I won't make you get all this information, but you at least need the customers, and guys, the customer is pretty much like the user. You need the user's ID and the user's name, and you also need the item's name that they're listing and the cost of the item. So for each item, you also need the user's ID and the user's name. And we say, okay, the only problem is some of the information is in our customers table and some of the information is in our items table. So how the heck do we want to do that? Well, check this out. Whenever I made this table, I arranged it in a very specific way, and I did it for a very specific purpose. In our items table, we not only have the name of the item and the price of that item, but we also have the ID number of who listed that item. So for example, the seller ID of this used diaper from my sister is 1. So therefore, we know that in our customers table, whoever has the ID of 1, that's who's selling the used diaper, who happens to be me, who lives at Hungerford Ave, Adams, New York, 13605. So that way, instead of having to type all the other information, we can just reference their ID number, and then you can hop over to the customers table and say, hey, that ID number is this person, or the person who's selling that car is Cynthia because her seller ID was 6. But how do we take this information and combine it into a new table? Well, in order to do that, I'll show you. Go ahead and use your select statement just like before, and what you need to do is you need to type the name of the columns that you want to use from each table. But check this out. In customers, we have a column name ID. Okay, that's nice. Why are you telling me this? Well, in items, we also have a column name ID. Okay, so that can get kind of confusing whenever you're typing in MySQL and you say select ID. MySQL is going to look at you and be like, hey, what ID do you want me to select? The customer's ID or the item's ID? In order to do this, we need to use fully qualified names. So remember, customers dot ID means, okay, select the ID column from the customers table. We also want to select the customer's name from the, or excuse me, the name from the customers table, because remember, name exists both in items and customers. So now what we want to do is we want to select 2 more columns. Our boss said items name and items cost. So now we selected 4 columns that we want to make up our brand new table that our boss required. So now we add a from and we say, okay, these are the columns. Now what tables is this information coming from? The customers tables and the items tables. Now, whenever you are making a join, just go ahead and hit all, or excuse me, list all of the tables that you want to join and separate them with a comma, but make sure not to put a comma after the last one. Now, after this, you need to add a where clause. And this where clause is basically saying, okay, how are these tables related? Well, they're related because the customer's ID is equal to the seller ID. Now, by default, MySQL doesn't know that the seller ID in items is actually the ID number of the customers. So that's pretty much the heart of this query. That's where we need to tell it how and where the tables are related. They're related right here. So now I'm just going to add a simple order clause, order by customers ID. Now let me just go ahead and copy this in case I have an error, run this baby, and check it out. We now have a new custom table with all of the information that our boss required without having to edit our customers table or items table. For each of the sellers, we listed their ID number. My ID number was number 1, the name of the sellers, and these 2 bits of information are from the customers table. Now these last 2 columns of information are from the items table. For each of the sellers, we listed the items they're selling and also the cost of the item. So now, check this out. Instead of going into our items table and having to write Bucky Roberts for all my items, and then in case we need to edit my name, we don't need to edit that 10 or 20 or 50 times for each item. The only thing we need to do is hop over to this customers table and say, okay, I'm just going to edit this once, and there you go. So it's a whole lot easier, and like I said, anytime you are working with joining tables in MySQL, what you do is you go ahead and you select all of the columns that you want to use in your new table, and make sure to use the fully qualified names so MySQL doesn't get confused. And then you write from and select what are the original tables that you're selecting those columns from. Next, you write your where clause, and your where clause is basically how your tables are related. What do they have in common? And also, if you want to order by them, just organize them in any fashion. You can sort them with an order by clause. I decided to order mine by customers ID. So there you go. Oh, I can't even talk now. I talked a lot during this tutorial. I might be running out of time, but there you go. There is your simple tutorial on how to join tables. And in the next lesson, I'm going to be showing you guys an alternative syntax that may be a little easier. But anyways, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. What is going on, guys? Welcome to your 23rd MySQL tutorial. And in this lesson, well, actually, before we begin, I want to mention this. I updated the MySQL file, so if you guys want that new table, go ahead, download the file. You can get it now. There you go. And if you don't know, it's my website is tnbforum.com, and just go in the database section, and it's right there for you guys. But anyways, what I want to talk about in this tutorial is outer joins. But before we begin that, I want to mention something that I probably should have mentioned last time. Remember when we were talking about column names and how you can have a column and you can give it a nickname by writing like as C or something, and then you can refer to that column as C? Well, you can also give tables nicknames. So I just want to show you guys a quick example because I'm probably going to be giving tables nicknames in the upcoming tutorials, and I didn't want you guys to get confused. So let me go ahead and type the whole query, because for these it's easier if I type the entire query and then explain it. So I'm just going to go ahead and select I.seller ID, and I'll give you guys a couple. I.name and C.ID. Might as well type it on different lines. From customers as C, so you guys can probably see what's going on already. Items as I. So basically what we did is, let me just go ahead and finish this before I start blabbing on. Seller underscore ID equals, and I'll just do C ID. Now let me run this and make sure this makes sense. There we go. No errors. Good. So basically, like I said, not only can we use the as keyword to give a column a nickname, but we can also give a table a nickname. So whenever you do that, just go ahead and write your table name as, and then give it a nickname, hopefully shorter, because if it's longer, it's not really a nickname. And do that with any table you want. And then on your entire query, instead of referring to this as items, seller ID, items name, customers ID, you just go ahead and you use that nickname. So not only whenever you're referring to the columns, but also in your where clause as well. So again, like I said, basically you can give tables nicknames as well as columns nicknames, and it just makes your coding a little bit faster, maybe a little bit easier to read. But anyways, I'm going to be giving nicknames in the upcoming tutorials, just didn't want you guys to get confused. But now we can get to the good stuff, the heart of this tutorial, which is outer joins. So what is an outer join? Well, let's go ahead and remind ourselves what an inner join was. An inner join was basically when we have two columns and we want to match them together. Okay, that's nice. But sometimes, and you guys probably noticed this already, you're going to have these instances where your rows don't line up exactly. Maybe you have some items that don't have a seller ID, or maybe you have some customers or users for your website who aren't listing items yet. Well, that's nice, but what if our boss comes in and he's like, Bucky, listen, I'm going to need a list of all the customers and the items that they're selling. For example, if Bucky's selling a tuna fish sandwich and a Corvette and a life vest, I'm going to need a list of those. So again, the name of the user and the items they're selling. Okay, simple enough. We'll just do a simple join. Should be on your way. But then he's like, oh, by the way, I also need the name of the user even if they aren't selling any items. And we're like, okay, that might get confusing. So let's go ahead and try to tackle this problem. So we go ahead and select customers.name, which is basically like the username, and the items.name. So basically the username and the items that they're selling from customers and items. Remember, where is basically saying how are these tables related. So customers customers dot ID should equal seller underscore ID. So we go ahead and rerun this, go check it out. And we'll just go ahead and sort it, make it look a little bit prettier. We hand this to our boss and he's like, wow, this is looking pretty good. Wait a minute, I could have sworn that there are some more users on our website. What the heck happened to them? Some people's names are messing up. Well, the reason that some people's names aren't shown up is because they don't have any items listed right now. But what if we wanted to show them anyways? Okay, that could get kind of confusing. So let's go ahead and rework this query a little bit. So of course we want the customers in the item's name, and we also want to use the customers table, but instead of just going customers in items where like we did before, what we want to do is write list left outer join. And I know the syntax looks weird, so I'm just going to go ahead and type this query and then tell you guys. So left outer join items. So take note that there's a table name here, and then you write basically join with this table on. And remember, the on keyword is basically saying how are these tables related. So customers.id, and this is basically the same condition as last time, equal seller underscore ID. So let's go ahead and run this and see what we get. Well, check it out. Not only did we get basically the same list as last time, but as you can see, it now lists the users that do not have any items listed as well. So when they don't have anything to associate it with, when your conditions aren't met and they don't have any related data, it still shows the table on the left. So basically, this query is different from a simple join because whenever you hit left outer join, it's basically saying that show all customers with items even if they aren't selling any items. Sounds weird. In the keyword left, what this means is, you know how that, look at this syntax right here. You see that right there? There's a table on the left in, I know it's kind of like below it right now, but if this was one long line, then this would be on the right. So customers is on the left and items is on the right of the syntax right here. Whenever you use the keyword left, you're saying left means to include all the rows from the table on the left, therefore the customers table, no matter what. So include all the customers no matter what, no matter if they have items or not. If we were to go ahead and hit right here, then what it would do is it would include all of the items, no matter if they had a seller going with them or not. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So as you can see, now all of the items are listed, but say this user went ahead and they deleted their username and they got banned or something, but the item was still on the website. Well, even though they wouldn't have a user associated with that item, since we use that right outer join, it takes all of the rows from the table on the right, which is in this case all of the items, and it forces those to be shown. So even though it doesn't have a customer associated with it, it forces those items to be shown. So that is the difference between left outer join and right outer join. Basically, do you want to force these rows to be shown or these rows to be shown? So again, that is what an outer join is, basically forcing rows to be joined, or excuse me, forcing rows to be shown, different from a regular join where both of the, basically they have to have related data. So there you go. I'm going to be done talking. Hopefully you guys understand, and don't forget to download the files. Go to my website, tnbayforum.com, and they're right there. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next lesson. What is going on, guys? Welcome to your 24th MySQL tutorial. And guys, I got some good news for you. You're just going to go ahead and sit back, breathe a sigh of relief, because in this lesson, it's going to be the first easy lesson. It's going to be really simple, easy to understand. I just need to talk to you guys about a really cool concept real quick, and that is something called unions. So quite often, whenever you're making a website, you're going to need to run multiple queries, but you're going to want a single result set because, you know, let's say that you wanted to make a website like eBay and you wanted to run a query that returned all the items over 190 bids, so like all the really popular items. Now you also wanted all the items over $1,000 regardless of bids. Maybe you're making this for your homepage or something. You wanted to display the cool items. So all the items that have over 190 bids and also all the items over $1,000 regardless of the number of bids. So what you would do is you would do something like this. Select the name, cost, and bids from items where bids is greater than 190. And remember, our other thing that we wanted is whenever we have an item that, come on, stupid mouse, whenever we have an item that costs more than $1,000. I cannot type today. I'm hitting all the wrong keys here. So basically, those are the two queries that we want to run. However, we only want one result set. We only want one set of data because, it's just a lot easier to work that way. So whenever we would run these queries right here, we would get a table for this and a table for this. Well, that's not good. We only want one set of data. So in order to basically take more than one query and end up with only one result set, just go ahead and in between your queries, type the word union. That's it. That's all. That's basically all this tutorial is. This word right here takes this query and this query, it runs it, and it gives you one set of data. How awesome is that? And I know what you guys are saying right now. Bucky, unions are absolutely worthless because, first of all, you could have done this, and you could have accomplished this same thing by just using where, or, and statements. Well, it may look a little messy, but the truth is, yes, you could. So why would you ever use unions? Well, first of all, whenever you're doing more complex filtering, guys, I just showed you guys a really simple example, but in real life, they aren't this easy. You're going to do complex filtering and you're going to have to use a bunch of different tables instead of the same table. And whenever you do, using unions is a whole lot more simple, cleaner, and easier to manage. So don't forget about unions. And also, another thing, there are some times that you have to use unions and you can't use where clauses, and I'll show you that in just a second. But before we get to that, I want to mention this. Please don't forget this. Remember, since what we're doing is basically taking multiple queries and tying them together into one result set, whenever you use unions, your columns have to be the same. You can't do something like select name, cost, bids from items, and select name, zip code, address, postal address, and state from another table. It won't work out because your tables won't tie together. So again, make sure that your columns are the same so that whenever they unite, they can tie together nicely. Now, what I was talking about earlier on, whenever you use unions, it automatically, MySQL automatically removes duplicate entries. So you know how we said, okay, select the items that are greater than 190 bids or they cost more than $1,000. Well, what if the case, in this case, the baby seat, where it costs more than $1,000 and it has more than 190 bids? Well, it doesn't list it twice, it only lists it once. You only see one baby seat here. So what if your boss said, okay, actually, this is like the home page of YouTube or something where you can have the top rated video and you can have the most viewed or most watched video. Well, if you want to get a list that doesn't remove the duplicate entries, then just go ahead and use union all. What this does is it basically leaves those duplicate entries in. So now you can go ahead and hit go and check it out. If this was the front page of your website, you would see baby seat twice. Once because it costs more than $1,000, and another time because it has more than 190 bids. So sometimes you want this, like I said, if you're making a website like YouTube and maybe a video was the most favorited and the most viewed. They deserve both of those honors, so there you go. So anyways, that's all you guys have for this tutorial. And another thing, before I let you guys go, whenever you use union all, that is one instance where a where clause won't do, and that's it. You basically have to use union all. You can't substitute it for anywhere. But anyways, I'm going to shut up. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. What is going on, guys? Welcome to your 25th tutorial, and in this lesson I want to talk to you guys about something called full text searching. It's an awesome feature that's built into MySQL. Basically, if you ever thought about making a search engine, or maybe you just have a website where you already have a search functionality, and maybe you're using like wildcards or a like statement or regular expressions to let users search your website for something, that's nice and all, but now let me introduce you guys to full text searching. It is just hands down way better than any other search feature that you can build. And awesome thing is, it's already built into MySQL. So the first thing we need to do is we actually need to enable this. Now, typically, whenever you create a table for the very first time, that's when you decide what columns you want to enable full text searching on. However, since we already created this table, or I did rather, we just want to alter the table a little bit. So I know I didn't tell you guys how to create tables or alter tables, so we're jumping a little bit ahead here, but just go ahead and type in this code. Alter table, and then go ahead and type in the table name, which is items. And what we want to do is, how do we want to alter it? We want to add a functionality called full text, not test, text. Now, inside the parentheses, just go ahead and write a column that has some text in it. You don't want to write any numerical columns here, or else it's not going to work out. Now go ahead and run this query. I'm not going to go ahead and run it again because I already have full text enabled because, well, I was playing around with it later on or earlier on. So go ahead and run this, and once you do, you might see a little prompt on your screen. As long as you don't get any error messages, you're good to go. But anyways, now that you ran that query, full text is now enabled on that column name. So we can now basically treat it like a search engine and search for things in that column. So let me go ahead and run a real quick example. Select name and cost from items where, now instead of having a where statement like maybe the word is like baby, or maybe I'm going to use a regular expression to make it baby, maybe make some wildcards, that's for noobs. We are here to learn about full text searching, and the syntax is a little weird. The first thing you want to write is match. Now, for this argument or parameter, or whatever you want to call it, inside the parentheses, you write what column do you want to search in? And I want to search in the name column because, well, quite frankly, it's the only one that we enabled full text searching on. But if you have multiple columns, make sure to specify here. So basically, what column do you want to search in? We want to search in the name column. Now, what do you want to search for? And you do that by writing the word against. Now, against, just like match, it takes parentheses, and inside the parentheses, you write your search term. So what do you want to search for? Well, I'm just going to search for the word baby because I know that there's some items with the word baby. It's like a baby coat, baby pacifier maybe. I don't know. We'll find out. So go ahead and hit go. And what it does is it takes the keyword baby and it basically searches all the items in the name column. And it ends up with baby coat, baby seat, baby soap, baby bottle. Pretty cool. A couple baby items. Maybe I'll buy some for my little cousin. Who knows? So basically, if you're like, okay, I could have done this exact same thing using the like keyword because you told me that before. It seemed pretty neat. I'm going to use that for my search engine instead. Well, you can, but there's a couple things going on behind the scenes, and hopefully I want to tell you guys about those, and hopefully I can talk you guys out of it. Even though you can't see it in this example, what MySQL is doing is it's ranking all of the results depending on how well it's matched. For example, whenever you go to Google and type in the word, I don't know, dog or something, it just doesn't get random results and, give you whatever is on its mind, whatever it's feeling. It actually has these results ranked depending on, what people clicked before, whatever algorithm they use. They rank them in a very smart fashion, and that's what this is doing right here, even though you can't see it because I don't know, these are really bad examples, but it's ranking it based on the number of keywords, the number of total words in the name column, and a bunch of other criteria that a bunch of smart people figured out. So aside from that, oh, excuse me, I got whoopee cough. Aside from ranking them automatically for you, which is awesome, it's not only better than like or regular expressions for that, but it's a lot faster too. I know you guys can't tell because these queries are really simple and my database isn't that big, but full text searching is usually a ton faster than using regular expressions or the like statement. And another cool thing that you can do is you can customize these a little bit further. So say for example that I don't know, your user wanted to look for baby items, but they didn't want to look for baby coats. Well, this has a special, I want to say, has a special feature, I guess would be the best way, and it's called a Boolean mode. So go ahead and after you're against, but make sure you're in your parentheses still, type in Boolean mode. Now, I'm just going to show you guys a couple symbols, but there are like 10 or 12 symbols that you can use. I'm going to show you guys two real quick. Now, the plus sign is whenever you type plus a word, it means make sure that this word is included. So it's only going to give you results where the word baby is included, just like before. Now, another easy one that we can understand, minus is make sure that this word isn't included. So basically, we want to search again using full text searching, but what we want to do is only search for the items that have the word baby and they don't include the word coat. So last time we ended up with baby coat, baby seat, baby soap, baby bottle. But now we want to take out baby coat, so we would do something like this. So run this beast and check it out. We get baby seat, baby soap, baby bottle. Wow, that's kind of like a tongue twister. But no baby coat. So again, like I said, those are two easy symbols. Those are probably the easiest ones that I could think of right now. But there are a lot other ones, and a lot of them deal with how the results are ranked. And guys, I encourage you to go on the website, go look at all the symbols, but I'm not going to bore you going through them all and show you all the little itty gritty details. But anyways, whenever you want to use the symbols, that's how you use them in Boolean mode. So anyways, I know you guys are probably not sold on full text searching yet, but whenever you make a huge database, trust me guys, don't forget about it, use it, and you'll see the benefits of it. But for now, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to add me on Google+, and I will see you guys in the next video. Alright guys, what is going on? Welcome to your 26th MySQL tutorial, and in this lesson, we're going to start finally editing the database, because before we have these tables, we have this data, and we can look at it, maybe select some columns, select some rows, that's nice, but we can never update, edit, delete, make new tables. In this tutorial, we're going to begin on that, and I'm going to show you guys how to insert a row of data first. So each of these is obviously a row, but what happens whenever we want to add a new one? Maybe we have a new user that signs up for our website, or maybe someone lists a new item. Well, let's go ahead and learn how to do that right now. So take note before we begin that I'm going to be working in the items table, and every item has an ID number, a name, a cost, a seller ID, which was who is selling that item, and a number of bids for that item. So let's go ahead and let me show you guys a really basic way, the core basics of inserting an item into a database. Go ahead and type insert into, and then after you type insert into, you write the name of the table you want to insert the data into, items. So now, what do you want to insert into items? Well, we just want to insert one row, so go ahead and type the word values. Now, inside here, these are the values. Now, remember I said that each row has an ID number, a name of the item, a price, a user ID, or excuse me, a seller ID, which is like the user ID, and the number of bids. So 5 things. So you need 5 things whenever you insert it in this kind of way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I just go ahead and do that. So I don't know, I like doing it because I don't forget any commas or whatever. So the next row I happen to know is 101. That's the ID number of the next item, and now we have to give it a name. We'll just say we're selling like bacon strips or something. And now, how much are we going to sell these babies for? $9.95 seems like a fair price. Now let's just say that the user ID is me. I remember from our customers table that Bucky Roberts is 1. And last but not least, the number of bids, it starts it as 0. So now that is how we insert a single row into our table. Right? Insert into, write the table name, and write the values, and make sure however many columns you have in your table, not only do these have to be in the correct order, well, I'll show you this right now. You see, whenever we look at our table, the items table, how these columns are arranged, first the ID, then the name, then the cost. That's what order you have to write into whenever you're writing your SQL statement. So remember, you can't change the order, it's given to you. So that's nice, and why am I stressing that so much? Because what if your boss comes in and he says, you know what, we actually don't need the number of bids right here, or we actually want to put the name at the end. Or he changes your table structure in some way, maybe adds columns, takes away columns. Well, that's nice and all, because now we can just write new SQL statements, but what if we programmed our entire website set up where it was just those statements where we had to insert the items in that specific order? Well, now we have to go back to our website, rewrite all of our code, and it's going to take a whole lot of time, and we're probably going to have to fix a whole bunch of crap. So I want to teach you guys a better way to insert data other than explicitly writing each column by column. So here is an alternative and better way. Go ahead and write insert into. You do this every time you insert any data. Now, of course, write your table name, but instead of just writing values after this and typing in whatever data you want in your new row, go ahead and add parentheses. And inside here is where you write the column names of what data you want to insert. So ID, name, cost, seller underscore ID, and bids. Now you can go ahead and write, wow, definitely spelled that wrong, values and how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember not to add a comma after your last one. So this is item 102. I didn't even show you guys the row that we just inserted. I'll show you in a second. And this item can be fish and chips. And how much can this be? $7.99. Seems like a reasonable price. And of course, my seller ID is 1 and it doesn't have any bids so far. So this is an alternative way by explicitly writing the column names. So now let's go ahead and hit go and check it out. One row inserted. Don't believe me? I'll prove it to you. Sort by ID, descending, and check it out. That was the first thing that we inserted. 101 bacon strips and 102 is fish and chips. So those are two alternative ways that we can insert data into a database row by row. But why did I say this was better? I want to talk to you guys about this. You know how our boss said, maybe, we don't need to put the number of bids, or maybe it's going to become, maybe it's going to go after ID or name is at the end. Well, even if your table structure changes, which it quite often does if you ever work for a web design or a programming company, this is still going to work because you're not saying, okay, you're not deleting this and said, okay, ID has to be first, name has to be second, the price has to be next. Even if those values are or columns are all mixed up, you're telling it right here what order you're going to insert this data into. So let me show you guys an awesome example. Even if your columns are ID, cost, name. Now we know our table is set up not in this order. It has ID, name, then cost, and then it has these two extra things. But it doesn't even matter because what we're saying is, okay, we only want to insert a row for the ID, cost, and name. So now whenever we type something like, let's see, what item is this? 103. 103 and I don't know, what am I going to sell this for? 777. And the name is beef on a stick. Much better than beef off a stick. So what happens is, unlike before where we have to explicitly give it the exact structure where the table is built, we can just insert data however we want to. However the programmer wants to insert the data, that's what we're going to do. So this is much better. And anyways, if our boss comes in and changes the table structure, this code is still going to work. So we're going to say, okay, we're inserting the ID number first, which is 103, then the cost, then the name. I don't care how the table is set up. This is how I'm going to insert data. So we can go ahead and hit go and make sure it's inserted just like this. Check it out. 103, beef on a stick, 777, and these two are default values, which I'll talk about in the next tutorial. But anyways, that is your tutorial. Again, the key thing to take away is you can go ahead and insert data without adding the explicit column names, but it's very nice to add the column names, not only because it tells MySQL how you want to insert the data, but you can also alter the number of columns that you want to insert and also the order of the columns. So it gives more control to the programmer instead of just the database designer saying this is how you need to insert data. So there you go. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to add me on Google+. Don't forget to send me $500. And I'll see you in the next video. Alright my friends, welcome to your 27th MySQL tutorial in I don't even know what I'm going to teach in this tutorial. I think I'm just going to wing it. But in the last tutorial, what we did is we left off with inserting this row of data. Now, whenever we did, we explicitly told it that we want to insert an ID, a name, and a cost. But we didn't give it any values for the seller ID and bids. Now, by default, there are some times when you cannot give it a value, and it's going to go ahead and just insert the default value, which was in this case 0. Now the default value for numerical numbers, not the other kind of numbers, the numerical numbers. The default value for numbers is 0, and whenever you have strings of text or characters like this, that might be a better way if I just highlight the column name instead. Whenever you have text, the default value is null. It's going to say NULL, and it basically means nothing. Whenever you see the word null, it means nothing, empty, void, space, nada. So again, the default values for numbers is 0 and the default for text is null. However, some tables will not allow you to insert no or null value. Some tables are going to explicitly say that you have to insert a value for every single column. And if you don't, you're going to get an error message. So just be prepared for that. You know, in the last tutorial I showed you guys how to insert only some columns. Just be prepared that depending on how you create your table, you have to or not have to insert all the values. And I'll teach you guys about that whenever I show you guys how to create tables in like 2 or 3 tutorials. But for now, I just want to warn you guys. So heads up. So what I want to teach you guys in this tutorial is how to insert multiple rows of data. So what you can do is you can just go ahead and type a bunch of insert into values, and just make a bunch of those statements and insert them row by row by row. Or you can do it all in one query, and I'm going to show you guys how to do that right now. So go ahead and hit insert into, I say hit a lot. Whenever I say hit, I usually mean type. Insert into items, and of course we want to do it the proper way. So ID, name, might as well insert everything. Cost, seller underscore ID, and bids. Now after this, go ahead and type the word values just like before. Now how I like to do it is I like to type the word values right here. And whenever I'm working with multiple rows of data, I like to put each row on a new line. So on the first line, again, what do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 items in each row, or 5 pieces of information for each row or each item. 1, 2, actually I'm going to use 1, 2, okay, calm down, take a deep breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now again, after every piece of information, you need a comma after every row, basically. So I'm gonna add, I don't know, let's just say 3 rows for this tutorial, and my mouse isn't working. There we go. So that and this one. Now remember, after the last row, you don't add a comma. People do this a lot, and if you do, you're gonna get an error message. So for the first piece of information, again, I think we left off at 103. We inserted like beef on a stick or something. So this is 104, and I'm going to sell some beef. Whoa, take it easy, caps locks. I'm going to sell some beef chops. My favorite kind of chops. And I'm going to sell these for $7.99. My seller ID is 1, and bids equals 0. Now, my next item is 105, of course, and I'm going to sell some jelly pockets, my favorite kind of pockets, and these are $4.50 each. And again, 1 for seller ID, that's Bucky Roberts, and 0. Now for the last thing that I'm going to sell, it's 106, and what do I want to sell? Big old sack of ham. And I'm going to sell this for $9.95, quite the deal if you ask me. And my seller ID and number of bids. So as you can see, basically the rules are quite similar to what you would expect. You go ahead and write insert into, and then you write the order and number of columns. Basically, how do you want to insert your data? So whenever you type values, each of these is a new row of data. Again, how do you insert data? Well, however you defined it up here. Now just remember, after each row there's a comma, except after the last one. If you're programming this in PHP or something, there would be a semicolon right here. But since you're just writing this in PHP in MyAdmin, you can just leave it out. So now let me go ahead and hit go, and well, looking pretty good. So we can go ahead and verify this if we just click on the items table, do a little browse, sort by ID descending, and come on baby, no whammy, no whammy. There we go. So there's my nice beef chops, jelly pockets, and a sack ham. By the way, if anyone wants it, quite the deal. And no bids. So that is how you insert multiple rows of data. Again, I like to take each row and put it on a new line. It just makes it a little bit easier. Now, I want to teach you guys about one last thing when it comes to inserting data. To be honest, this is one of those things that I don't even know if I should show you because it's usually a waste of space, but it's information that may come in handy one day. So you can also insert items into a database, or a table rather, using a select statement. Now let me give you an example of when you would do this. Say that, I don't know, say that you had a website and you just bought out eBay because your website's pretty successful. Now you want to merge your websites together, so you have all these items in your table, but they have all their items in that table. So are you saying that we're going to have to hire some guy to go through and physically type like 1,000 or 2,000 insert statements? No. What you can do is you can insert data into a table from a simple select statement. Now, again, I only have one table items here, but pretend that we have a different table set up with the exact same structure named more items, and it just had a bunch of other items. So what you would do is something like this. Insert into items, and you would of course write how you would want to insert them: ID, name, cost, seller ID, and bids. And now, instead of writing values, which you would have to explicitly type each piece of information row by row, you can just use a select statement. So select ID, name, cost, seller underscore ID, and bids from more items. Now this more items table is just a fake table, so I'll actually name it fake table. So again, if you had another table, then what this would do is it would select all of the rows from that table and it would insert them into your items table in this order right here. So again, remember, whenever you're doing this, it's probably better to use a where clause, because if you don't use a where clause, then it's going to select every single row. Now, again, I don't have a fake table, but this is how you would do that. Basically, take all the rows from another table and insert them into a single table. So I guess it's good if you're merging tables, but otherwise, why do I say that this is not a good idea? Because at first glance it might seem quite useful. Well, it's not a good practice, because then you're going to have the information on this table and this table. And as we know, one of the rules in MySQL, whenever you have duplicate information, it's usually a waste of space. So guys, please, this is your warning. So basically, um, that's it. That's a tutorial. You may use this whenever maybe you're making a new table with your high priced items or your new items that you want to appear on your homepage, but generally stay away from it. That's my warning. So anyways, thank you guys for watching, and yeah, don't forget to subscribe, add me on Google Plus, all that good stuff. Send me $1,000,000 on my website, and I'll see you in the next video. In the next video, we're going to be talking about updates. See you then. Alright everyone, welcome to your 28th MySQL tutorial. I have no idea why you guys are still watching these. Total waste of time. I'm just kidding. But anyways, welcome to your 28th tutorial, and now that we know how to do all sorts of cool stuff, insert rows into our table, we know how to do a whole bunch of query select statements, I think it's time we learn how to edit rows. So check it out. Let's say that we just inserted an item into this website. So I'm selling some, I don't know, a sack of ham or something. But then I was like, oh, wait a minute, Mom. You said pudding hammock? I thought you said sack of ham. Now I have to sell a freaking sack of ham? Well, we need a way to edit items that are already in the database. Now we can do this in one of two ways. The first way is that we can just go ahead and delete this row and rewrite it, but there's an easier, more simple way, and I'm going to show you that right now. So in order to edit a row, you use the term update. I think they should have chose edit, but they chose update instead. It means the same thing. Now you're saying, okay, what table do you want to update? Well, I want to update a row from the items table, so there you go. Go ahead and hit items. Now after this, you need to say, okay, which piece of information did you want to update? Did you want to update the ID, the name of it? Maybe you wanted to change the price or the number of bids? Well, in order to do that, we first need to use the set keyword. Now, set means change, basically. Now, after this, we write the name of the column or the piece of information that we want to change. So, of course, what was I say? a sack of ham or something. I forgot what it was. But anyways, we want to change it. So we want to change the name. Well, what do you want to change it to? Just go ahead and give it a new value using equals and then type the new value. We wanted to sell a pudding hammock. And if you don't know what that is, I would recommend that you Urban Dictionary that shiz. We wanted to actually sell a pudding hammock instead of a sack of ham. So we can't just go ahead and run this baby right now, because look what happens whenever we would run this. It would update the items table and it would set the name of all of your items to pudding hammock. Now, unless you're running a website and you're selling 300 pudding hammocks, I don't recommend you do this. So whenever you use the update, oh, excuse me, I can't talk. Whenever you use update to edit rows, it is critical that you use a where clause. Now, the where clause is saying, okay, what row do you want to edit? Well, we only want to edit where ID is equal to 106. We only want to edit this item. We don't want to change the name of all of the rows in our table. So now let's go ahead and run this and check it out. It now says one row affected, and if we go look at items and sort, find 106, it now changed the name of 106 to pudding hammock. Now, how awesome is that? So check this out. Say that I don't know, we were maybe editing this and maybe we had to take it down because we're not allowed to sell pudding hammocks, but then we talked to the owner of the website and he allowed us to put it back up. Well, that's nice and all, but why the heck did you reset my bids to 0? These are hot items. They're selling like hotcakes. This thing had like 66 bids on it. Well, of course, we need to edit that too. So if you're saying, okay, not only do I want to edit one column, but I want to edit multiple columns, we can do that as well. Now, I'm not going to have to type the whole thing. Let me just, well, I might as well change this again. So let's say, you know what, instead of selling pudding hammocks, I'm going to sell frog paste. It's the best paste, trust me guys. Now, whenever you want to edit more than one columns, again, this is pretty self-explanatory, but you just separate it with a comma. Now you go ahead and write the other name of the column, for example, the bids, and you can edit these too. So again, just like before, separate your columns with a comma and just write the new value of each. So now we're changing the item 106 again. We're changing the name to frog paste, and we're going to add 66 bids because, I don't know, why not? It's just an example. Give me a break, guys. So now we go ahead and hit go, and it says one row affected. But of course, you can never trust computers. Did you ever see Eagle Eye? So we're going to make sure frog paste and bids 66. So that is not only how you update items, but also how you update an item with multiple, well, you know, I can't even explain it, multiple columns at once. So now I want to teach you guys about delete. And you guys are thinking, okay, next tutorial, but I'm not going to teach you in the next tutorial because delete and how to delete rows of items. For example, if we no longer want to sell this frog paste or we no longer want this beef on a stick on the website, I'm going to show you guys how to delete this. And the reason I'm not waiting for another tutorial is because this is the easiest thing I have ever taught anyone in my life. So in order to delete rows, just go ahead and hit delete from and write what table do you want to delete a row from. Well, I want to delete from items where ID equals 106. You guys probably think I'm going to type something else after this, but I'm not. That's it. The only thing you write is what row do you want to delete and what table are you deleting that row from. Now, again, the where clause is very important because if you just say delete from items, it might delete your entire table. So let me go ahead and delete the item. I'll go ahead and delete 104. So it says, do you really want to delete? Okay, yes I do. And it says, okay, I freaking deleted it for you. You said okay, you even verified it. So now we got to go ahead and check. We got 106, 105, 104 is now deleted from our table, 103, 102, 101, so on and so forth. So I can't even remember what that item was, but that is how you delete items from a database. And again, I know a lot of you guys are just going to be so tempted to not use that where clause and it's going to delete your whole table, but hey, there you go. So another thing I want to mention, this is the last thing I promise before you know, you guys can go watch weird cat videos or something, but that's why primary keys and ID numbers are so important, because you know how in our where clause I said delete items where ID equals 106. Well, say that you decided not to use primary keys or ID numbers because, you just don't take my advice. Well, then you started this website and a bunch of people were selling DVDs. Well, you wanted to delete this item right here because this is a spammer who posted this. So you said delete where name equals DVD. So yes, you ran that query and it would delete this row too, but it would delete all those other people who also named their items DVDs. So whenever you use primary keys, instead of giving it a general name that may delete 10 or 20 other rows accidentally, you say delete item 99 because that's the primary key. No other row can have that primary key, and you give it an ID so that way it knows which specific one to delete. So that is the beauty of primary keys, and again, that's one little gem of information. Plenty more to come. In the next tutorial, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be showing you guys how to create entire tables. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be amazing. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and add me on Google+, and I will see you guys in the next video. What is going on, everyone? Welcome to your 29th MySQL tutorial, and this is a tutorial that some of you have been waiting for. The lesson where I finally teach you guys how to create tables. Now, if you already played around with PHPMyAdmin, you can have probably guessed that if you want to create a table on your database, just go ahead and click the database name, and then you can create a table, just name your table, say how many columns. But we're not here to learn PHPMyAdmin, my friend. We are here to learn MySQL. So I'm going to teach you guys how to create a table through command line. So go ahead and wherever you can type in your SQL statements, the syntax to create a table is this. You guys are going to think this is totally confusing and baffling, but it's actually create table. Amazing, huh? So now that we want to create a table, what do we want to name it? Say we were making a website, I don't know, we'll just make like a very simple website where we can have users sign up. So I'll just name this table users. Now, after this, go ahead and write parentheses. Now, I'm going to show you guys how I create a table, and I just think it's the easiest way. But each column I like to put on a new line. So every time you create a new column, I'm going to put it on a new line. And every time you create a column, it's going to need information about that column. The first piece of information is the column name. What do you want your name or column? You want to name it ID, bid, seller ID? What is it? I'm just going to name this ID. This is going to be the primary key. Next is what type of data do you want to store in this? Well, I just want to store numbers, just regular integers. Now, I don't want to talk to you guys about all the different types of data because there's like, I don't know, probably like 50 different types of data, and a lot of them are kind of redundant. So I'm just going to tell you guys about the different types as we go along. But the first type is int, I-N-T, and what this means is integer, basically whole numbers, numbers without a decimal point. So now I want to create a column that's going to hold integers, and I'm going to name it ID. That's how I do that. Now, on my next one, I want to create another column for as well. I'm going to create another column on this table named username, where users can pick their username. You should pick the New Boston because it's a pretty good one. And now, the type of data for this, you can use text, character, but I like to use varchar. What this means is it's pretty much strings, or if you don't know what a string is, if you're not very familiar with programming, just think of it as like text. So now, I probably should mention this. Some data types, okay, back up even more. Whenever you specify that you want to create a column on your table, I told you guys that it needs a couple pieces of information. The name of the column, the type of data that it's going to be storing, for example, integers. It also needs a maximum storage size. So basically, how big of integers can you put in here? How big of strings or how many characters of text can you put in here? Well, every data type needs a maximum storage size. Some data types already have default sizes, so that's why I didn't explicitly need to write how many bytes of memory or whatever we're going to be storing in here. But for varchar, we need to explicitly tell it in parentheses how many characters is the maximum, basically, how big can a person's username be? Well, whenever we write 30 here, this means that their username can be no longer than 30 characters. And again, this is kind of confusing because some data types like int, they have a default maximum size, so you don't need to specify it. But other ones like varchar, you do need to specify. And in order to determine does my data type or doesn't it have a default size, you can just look on the MySQL website. It's probably changing all the time anyways. But now we have a primary key, a username, and we also want a password for them. So go ahead and type password, and this of course is just text2, letters and numbers, varchar, and I'll just give it a maximum size of 20. So their password can be no longer than 20 characters. Now you know how I said that every table you create should have a primary key. Now in this table, it was obviously the ID, the first one we created, not the username, not the password. However, our MySQL, our database, doesn't know that already. It's not smart. I just can't say, hey, this is my primary key. We need to say that the primary key for this table is going to be ID. Now, whenever we do that, we need to go ahead and type on a new line. Well, it doesn't need to be on a new line, but I like to type it on a new line. Primary key. Now, in order to specify your primary key inside parentheses, you go ahead and write the name of the column that's the primary key in this ID. So basically, to create a table, you go ahead and write create table, and then you give it a table name. Now, once you're done with that, you need to say what columns are going to be in your table. Now, every time you make a column, you need the name of the column, which is username, the type of data that column is going to store, which is this text or varchar, and the maximum data size or the maximum storage size. So in this case it's 30, and again the reason why we don't have to use it whenever we create tables that hold floats or ints is because ints and floats and a bunch of numerical data types, they already have default sizes. So now just go ahead and hit go or run your query, and we now have our table. So check it out. If you go ahead and click on the left hand side users, we can now browse it. So again, the column name, ID, username, and password, and whenever something is underlined in PHPMyAdmin, it means it's the primary key. Now the type of data, the ID is just going to be integers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth. Username and password is just going to be text, and again, these are the maximum storage size. 30 characters, 20 characters, or 11 bytes, which is basically, it's not like 0 to 11. It's 11, it's a really big number. I just want to mention this. I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's a really big number. So now we got all this other stuff like attributes, null. What the heck is null? Default. What the heck is this crap? In the next tutorial, I'm going to show you guys some other settings that whenever you're making a table, that they're going to come in handy, such as null, auto increment, all that good stuff as well. So that is the basics of how to create a simple table, but in the next lesson, I'm going to show you guys how to create a more advanced table. So trust me, guys, it's going to be probably the best tutorial ever. Trust me. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys then. What is going on, guys? Welcome to your 30th MySQL tutorial, and in this lesson I want to talk to you guys about some additional pieces of information that you can use whenever you're creating your tables. They're going to come in handy. The first piece is null or not null. Now, whenever you create a table and you want to allow the people to insert rows, there are certain columns where you can leave empty and it doesn't really matter. For example, whenever you're making a website and you want a user to sign up and type in their username and password, you don't want them to leave this empty. So in other words, you do not want this null. You do not want this empty. There are other times when you may have forms on your website that it's okay to leave empty. For example, you know those address forms that say address 1 and there's an optional address 2 if you live in an apartment or maybe you have some foreign address? Well, not everyone needs to fill out the address 2 or the second address, so it's okay if they leave that empty. But other times, such as name, zip code, you need to fill that in. So let me go ahead and give you guys a quick example. Username varchar, if you were to insert a row like this, where you definitely needed the information to be required, they couldn't leave it empty, such as a username, you definitely want a username, go ahead and after you're done writing your data type, type the word not, what I say, nut, not null. And what this means is not empty. They can't enter a blank for a username. So if you were to have something like address 2, you would go ahead and not even include that because address to is optional. But again, remember, whenever you want the information to be required and you can't have it empty, go ahead and type not null. And this means that if they try to insert a row of data without a username or with a blank username, it won't insert it into your table and it'll give them an error. So that's what not null means. It can't be empty. Another thing is something called auto increment. Now, whenever you're making a primary ID, say you want to make a primary ID, it's of course an int, and of course it's not null because that's the unique identifier. You can't have it empty. Now, we don't want the user to choose their own primary key. We want to do that automatically. Now, in order to do this, every time a row gets inserted into your database, we want it to increase by 1. For example, we want the first user that signs up to have the primary key of 1. We want the second one to have the ID number of 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth. So how can we do this? Well, at first, you may be thinking, okay, so I'm going to have to make a query. I'm going to have to select the most recent user. I'm going to have to select their ID number, maybe make a formula, add 1 to it, and then throw it in for this one. Pretty confusing, huh? Or you can just use this keyword right here, auto underscore increment. Now, whenever you use the keyword auto increment, that means that it's automatically going to add 1 to the last ID. You don't have to do anything manually. It automatically adds 1 whenever you create a new row. So there you go. Instead of having to grab the last piece of data and making a formula to add 1, it automatically adds 1 to each entry. Sounds confusing. Once you get the hang of it, it's really not. So now let me show you guys what a final full table creation will look like. So let's say we want to create a table. We already have users and customers, so let's just name this, I don't know, people. You can even name it bacon or something stupid. Doesn't matter. So of course, let's just go ahead and enter the same information as before, ID, username, and password. Now ID is going to be the primary key, so int. Now of course, not null. And aside from that, auto increment. So this is going to start by default at 1, and it's going to keep going and going, add 1 to it each time. The user doesn't have to worry about the ID number. You don't have to worry about the ID number. MySQL is going to take care of everything for you. So again, their primary key is not null. It can't be empty, and it's going to increase by 1 each time. Now the next one, the next column is username, which is just text, letters and numbers, and we'll give this a max of 30, and this can't be empty either. And the third one is password, varchar, I think this was 20, and of course they need a password. They can't have this empty either. Now last but not least, we already know that we want this to be the primary key, there we go. I was about to say primary IKEA, totally different, but MySQL doesn't know that yet, so we need to tell it. So primary key, we want one of these to be the primary key. Which one, you say? ID. So now we go ahead and create this table, and it says, okay, table created, bam, there you go. So now if we look at bacon, it has ID as the primary key, username and password before, but now none of these are allowed to be null, and also ID gets auto incremented. So if we were to add some information in the bacon table, say we wanted to, I don't know, insert 2 users or something. Check it out. For ID, I'm not going to put anything by default. And whenever you're programming your website or something, you don't insert any value in here explicitly. You let MySQL take care of it. So the first user comes along and his name is Bucky. He must be a pretty cool guy. And his password is password because he's an idiot. Now the next user comes along and her name is Sally and her password is slam bacon. So now we go ahead and hit go, and it says 2 rows inserted. But now we go ahead and look at our bacon table and check it out. MySQL automatically gave Bucky the user ID of 1, and he gave Sally the user ID of 2. How awesome is that? And if we were to add more, we would just need the username and password, and MySQL would automatically give them the next ID of 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, so on and so forth. So there you go. That is how you, well, make awesome tables. And Is there anything else? Let me think. No, that's it. So I mean, I guess I could sit here and not talk about anything else, but what would I do that for? So anyways, I'm going to go watch some videos and maybe go get a milkshake at McDonald's. I know it's unhealthy, but come on guys, give me a break. So anyways, thank you guys for watching, and no idea what I'm going to be teaching in the next lesson, but it's going to be awesome, so I will see you then. What is going on, guys? Welcome to your 31st MySQL lesson. And in this tutorial, I want to finish up kind of talking about messing with tables, the last main things that we need to talk about. The first thing is, I already showed you guys how to create a table and how to make like all the data types and columns and stuff. But what if you want to maybe add an additional column? Maybe you make your table and say, okay, this is good, but you have your website up and running, and about a month later, you're like, dang, I really need an extra piece of information when people sign up. So let's go ahead and learn how to do that. Anytime you already have an existing table and you want to add a column, you can do it in one of two ways. I'll show you guys the first way. Alter table, and we'll just go ahead and alter this bacon table right here. So go ahead and write the name of your table after, which is bacon. And if you want to add a column, just go ahead and hit add, and then write the name of your column, the new one, which is sample column or whatever. And then, of course, just like whenever you're creating a column for the first time, you need a data type, which can be, well, it doesn't really matter for this example. I'm just going to make it a varchar with 10. So now, what this does, whenever you run this query, it's going to add a new column to this bacon table, which is called sample column, which has the data type of varchar 10. Simple enough. Now, in order to drop a column, or in other words, delete a column from this table, let's go ahead and run another query. It's basically the same thing, but instead of add, you hit drop column, and I'll discuss the differences later on. So alter table basically means change the table, bacon, and drop column. Now what column do we want to drop? Well, it turns out that we didn't need that sample column after all. Now the other thing that's different aside from add turns into drop column, you know how when we added a column we needed to specify the data type? Well, whenever we're dropping a column, MySQL doesn't really matter what that data type is, it just cares about the column name. So if we go ahead and run this right here, it's going to say, it's going to give us, our confirmation. Do you really want to drop that column? Yes, we do. Go ahead and hit OK. And now our column is dropped. So that is one way that we could add columns and drop columns. Another way is, and sometimes you may want to do this, whenever you want to kind of preserve the data and just make a new table, you can just go ahead and make an entirely new table. So say we had this bacon table right here. Bacon has ID, username, and password. Now if I wanted to make a new table with an additional column, but I didn't want to, maybe mess up this table, or I was afraid of editing it, what I would do was I would create an entirely different table, maybe name it bacon2 or something like that, and I would take all of this data and import it into bacon2, and that way if I messed up anything I still had just this original table. So that is another variation that you can do that. So say that you did that and now all of your data is successfully transferred into a new table called bacon2. Well, now we want to get rid of this bacon table because, hey, it's just taking up space on our database. So in order to delete an entire table, here's how you do that. Drop table bacon. Now whenever you do this, be absolutely sure that you never want to use the table again. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this, and it's going to give us our confirmation, and not only does it delete the table, but all of the information. So again, make sure that you definitely are very careful with this command. So drop table, okay, the bacon table is dropped. So now, actually now that I think about it, I probably should have done these last two little lessons in reverse order, but I'm going to show you guys how to rename a table. So now that we don't have bacon to work with anymore, I guess I can't rename it to anything like sausage or anything, but check this out. You know how we have this customers table and it kind of has all the users information? Well, I've been doing these tutorials and I was kind of thinking, you know what? Wouldn't it be handy if this customers table was actually named users instead? That would be maybe make things a lot more clear. So, what if I could rename this table customers to users? Wouldn't that be nice? Yes, it would. So let's go ahead and learn how to rename a table. Anytime you want to not, import data. Don't mess with the data at all. Just change the title of the table. Go ahead and hit rename table and then give it the name of your original table, which is customers. And now go ahead and write to and then give it a new name. So I want to rename the customers table to users. So I'm going to go ahead and run this, and it's going to say, okay, your query has been successfully executed. Now it doesn't update here, but if you go ahead and look on your database, you can see that it does indeed update. So I just want to mention that not only with, whenever you're renaming stuff, but sometimes whenever you're deleting things in PHP it takes a little bit to update on the left-hand side. But if you go ahead and, exit out, then look back in, it should be updated. So anyways, that is how you change columns, add columns, drop columns, delete tables, rename tables. So now that's basically all there is for table-wise, how to create tables and mess with tables. So in the upcoming tutorials, we're going to be learning about some advanced techniques that go beyond the basics. And for right now, how can I say this? You are an intermediate MySQL user, but the next 10 tutorials are going to take you to the next level. They're going to be awesome and amazing. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys then. Alright guys, welcome to your 30-second lesson, and in this lesson I want to talk to you guys about something called views. Now views are kind of tricky, but once you get the hang of them, you're going to be able to do some amazing things with them, and they're going to save you a whole bunch of time. So definitely pay attention to this tutorial because it's going to be a good one. Now views, kind of think of them right now as temporary tables. Now remember this, views don't contain any real data. They're just holding data from other tables. So that's all a view is, a view into another table. So let me give you guys an example of when you would use a view. Say you had a website like eBay and you had all of these items, and on your home page you wanted to show the items that have the most bids, the hottest items. So what you would do is you would just go ahead and run a query, sort by bids, and show the top 10 most bidded items. So let's go ahead and run a query to do that. We'll go ahead and select ID, name, and the number of bids from items, and we'll just go ahead and in order to show the top 10, we'll just order by the number of bids, so we'll get highest to lowest, and in order to do that we need of course descending, highest to lowest, and say we only want 10. We only want the 10 most bidded items. So let's go ahead and run this query and make sure it works. So clearly, as we can see, what this query returns is the top 10 most bidded items. But check this out. We not only want to put this on the home page, but maybe on every user's page we want to run this query on, so they can see the most top 10 bidded items, and then maybe we're going to make a little app so people can put it on their own page, and I don't know, we just want to run this query a bunch of times. So what we can do is every time we want to show the user the top 10 most bidded items for our website, we can go ahead and run this query again, or we could use a view. Now let me show you guys how to make a view out of this query. What you would do, and this is how I do it, this is probably the easiest way to make a view. Go ahead and run your query and make sure it works, and then once you have your query set up how you want it to, go ahead and just hit enter and bump it down a line. Now at the top line, go ahead and write create view, and then go ahead and name your view. And remember, a view is pretty much like a temporary table. So I'm just going to go ahead and name this view something like most bids. And then go ahead and write as. So we're pretty much saying go ahead and create a temporary table called a view, name it most bids, and as the data, just go ahead and use the data from this query right here. So now go ahead and hit go, and it says okay, we created it. Now as you can see, it creates a view on our left hand side, and if you can tell by the little icon, a view is different from a table because there is actually no data inside this view. The data that you're seeing is actually the data that exists inside items. Now this is good for a couple of reasons. First of all, whenever the items change up, maybe it's a week later and all the items are sold and we get new items with the highest bids, so do the items in the most bids view. This is pretty much a dynamic table. It updates automatically, and therefore it's better than creating a new table, because check it out. If we were to just create an entirely new table out of the top 10 items in items, then every time those items change, we would need to update the new table. But with a view gets updated automatically. Whenever you run this query, it's going to take the top 10 most bidded items at the time. So that's pretty much a cool thing. Whenever the items table changes, so does its view. So that's a cool thing. It saves you from having to rewrite their entire table every time you want to update your table. So pretty much just remember that a view is dynamic and it updates automatically anytime the information in the items table changes. So I know it's kind of hard to get used to, but well, that's it. Views are kind of complicated at first, but once you get the hang of them, you'll be good. Now another thing, and maybe this will give you guys a better idea of when you would use views. Say that, in our example, oh man, it must have been like 15 tutorials ago, I said that you can maybe make a new table or even a new column to have the properly formatted mailing address. Because, for example, whenever you want to mail something to someone in the United States, you write the name of their city and then their state separated by a column. But if we just use the data straight from here, there's no way that you can use a column. So what we can do is we could actually add a temporary column onto here, or we can go ahead and just add a view. So let me go ahead and turn this baby into a new view. So go ahead in SQL and let's run our query first. So what we want to do is we want to tie the city and state together, so it's city, comma, state in a proper mailing format. So what we do is select, and remember that concat function, it takes pretty much three things and ties it together, or any number of things actually. So city, and then after this I'm just going to add a comma with a space after it, and then add state. So for example, it would say Las Vegas, Nevada, or something like that. And I'm just going to go ahead and write as address from users. Now remember, whenever you use the as keyword, it pretty much gives it a nickname. So let's go ahead and see what this baby does. Now what it does is it makes an entirely new column called address by taking the old city, adding a comma after it and a space, and then writing the state. So say that we actually wanted to save this address not only as a temporary column, but we wanted to save it as a new view. So go ahead to where you wrote your query, and right above it, just go ahead and write create view. And now remember, a view is pretty much a temporary table. So give it a temporary table name. And since we're using this for a mailing address, I'll just go ahead and write mailing as, and under your as, just go ahead and write that query that we had before. So what this is going to do is it's going to create a temporary table or a view called mailing, and the information that's going to be inside that table is whatever we selected in this query right here. So go ahead and hit go and check it out. On the left hand side, if we click to browse our table or view, we can see that we now have our properly formatted address. Now you guys are probably saying, okay, so why wouldn't you just make a temporary column? Well, whenever you have a view, you can treat it just like you would a table. For example, you know how we could, of course, run select queries on items and users? We can also run basic select queries on these new views. For example, if we go ahead and select, if I can type, select name and bids from most bids, what this is going to do is it's going to select the name and the number of bids from our most bids view. Now remember, our most bids view is the one we made in our first example, which took the top 10 most bidded items and put them into an entirely new table. So let's go ahead and run this query and see what we got. The top 10 most bidded items. How awesome is that? So basically the thing that you have to remember is views do not store any data themselves. That is one benefit they have over making a duplicate table, for example, that would store the top 10 items, because they don't store any additional data. They just show you data from other tables, and that's why they don't take up any extra memory. It's basically a shortcut for having to retype a query each and every time you want the top 10 items or anything else, for example. And I know I showed you guys some examples in this tutorial that were probably pretty useless, but trust me, views can come in handy, especially when you have queries that you run quite often, duplicate queries, or, you'll figure it out whenever you're programming. But for this tutorial, that's all I have for you. I bet you guys are probably sick about hearing of views. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next lesson. What is going on, guys? Welcome to your 33rd and final video of MySQL. Now, I know there are some things such as triggers, cursors, stored procedures, some things that I didn't cover, but a lot of these technologies are not fully supported yet in all versions of MySQL. So what I'm going to do is I decided not to teach these other things until the technology is fully developed and that MySQL and all versions of them support these things such as triggers, cursors, stored procedures, so on and so forth. So for now, there you go. That's your beginner's tutorial in MySQL databasing. Congratulations, you made it to the end. And before I let you guys go, I want to tell you guys a couple of things. First of all, whenever you want to back up your database in PHPMyAdmin, go ahead and log in and click on the database that you want to back up. For example, mine is named YouTube. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and now all you have to do is hit this export tab right here. Now you can go ahead and choose custom if you don't want to export all the tables or something, but the easiest way is just to use quick selection, quick export, and make sure you export it as SQL format. Now when you go ahead and hit go, what it's going to do is it's going to save the file for you. Now this is your SQL file pretty much the file that you have been importing from my file, to use an example, it's basically the same type of file. So there you go. There's your backup. If you ever lose your database or something, just create a new database real quick and import this file using the import tab, and you'll be good to go. So that is how easy it is to export and import, pretty much how to back up a database using PHPMyAdmin. Now, I said that was the last thing, but I actually want to give you guys a few more tips that are going to make your database life a whole lot easier. Now, the first tip is whenever you create a database and you're creating your tables, take the time to create your table structure properly. Make sure you have all the columns you need, make sure you name them properly, and especially make sure to take the time to choose the right data type and the right amount of memory for each column. It's going to save you guys a whole lot of headache in the future. Now, the next tip is make sure you never retrieve more data than is necessary. This is probably the biggest mistake I see beginners use. For example, they pretty much use select all for pretty much their only query, and then they pick out the pieces, but this isn't good. You typically want to use select all basically never unless it's absolutely necessary. Again, never get more data than you absolutely need. And the last piece of advice is full text is usually generally better than like. Remember this, full text greater than like. It's just faster and it's cleaner and the technology is just better in every way I can think of. So with those little pieces of information, I'll finally let you guys go because I bet your brain is about to explode from all this MySQL. So go take a break, go do something else. And again, like I said, whenever these technologies are fully supported, I'm going to come back and do either add more videos onto this series or do an advanced tutorial series on MySQL covering triggers, cursors, stored procedures, all that good stuff. But for now, that's all you guys get. So thank you guys so much for watching this series. And if you have any further questions, just go to my forum, tnbforum.com, and I'll answer them for you there. So again, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to add me on Google+. I'll see you later, and thanks again.